Chapter 314. Boom! Arriving at the center of the spectator area, Suzumo took out his weapon tripod from his storage bag and slammed it on the ground with a loud bang. At that moment, it was not only Tao Feng and everyone from True Fire sect. The 100,000-odd cultivators in the square and the 1,000-odd Jin Dan perfected beings at the spectator area all had their gazes fixed on Suzumo. The pressure was so immense that ordinary people would not be able to understand it. In everyone's eyes, regardless of whether Suzumo had true capabilities or not, he was too young. If his mental state and willpower were not firm enough and he showed even the slightest bit of fear, there would definitely be huge problems during weapon refinement. With an indifferent expression, Suzumo gathered a scarlet flame in his palm and began warming the tripod. After it was done, Suzumo took out pieces of spirit ores that emitted rich spirit chi from his storage bag and tossed them into the weapon tripod. Heavens, that's purple feather rock. That handful of sand is dark and lusterless. It seems to be lusterless sand. Look, there's ice silkworm steel, pure gold crystal and mystic thunder jade. A series of exclamations could be heard from the crowd. These spiritual ores were extremely rare materials. Any one of them could be used as a core material to refine a supreme-grade spiritual weapon. But now, Suzumo had placed all those rare spirit ores together. What was he trying to refine? That question surfaced in everyone's minds uncontrollably. The more rare spirit ores were fused, the more difficult it would be to refine a spirit weapon. There were very few weapon refinement masters who would take such a risk. Before long, all the spirit ores were tossed into the weapon tripod. Swoosh! Flames rose and began to burn the spirit ores in the weapon tripod. Time passed bit by bit. After the smelting was done, it was time for molding. Under the attentive gazes of countless people, a spiritual weapon gradually took shape. Everyone's eyes gradually widened as astonishment appeared on their faces. What's that? A saber? Holy F***CK, isn't that saber way too big? It even has a hilt. Not only does it consume a lot of spiritual energy to wield such a big thing, it's also very inconvenient and clumsy. Even if I could refine it, it would be useless. Within Suzumo's weapon tripod, a saber gradually took form. It was half the height of a person and its blade was extremely wide, even wider than an adult's palm. The back of the saber was thick and heavy. In the past 3 years, Suzumo had forged too many spirit weapons. There were hundreds of supreme-grade spiritual weapons. However, Suzumo had never refined a suitable long saber for himself. At this moment, Suzumo felt that the time had come. A man from True Fire sect said, "This saber has a hilt. It should have been refined for him." It said that this lad's close combat strength is not bad. The person who spoke had a cold gaze. He looked at Suzumo with a trace of killing intent. His name was He Jiang and he was a legacy disciple of the True Fire sect. His younger brother, He Xing, was the alchemist who had died at the hands of Suzumo. "It's a pity that he forgot something," Tao Feng sneered, "with so many rare spirit ores fused together, even if all the impurities are removed, the weight of this saber will reach a frightening level. At that time, he probably won't even be able to lift it." Suzumo was satisfied as he looked at the spirit saber that was gradually taking form. He had divine strength but did not know any saber techniques. That was the reason why he had created such a clumsy and gigantic spirit saber. That way, the spirit saber that was already heavy and ferocious to begin with would be able to release an extremely terrifying attack when coupled with his strong physique and terrifying blood chi. The forging was done and tempering began. Suzumo's spirit energy condensed into a pair of gigantic hands that entered the weapon tripod. His fingers turned into hammers and struck the saber repeatedly, letting out a series of crisp sounds. Cling! Clang! A moment later, the expressions of many weapon refinement masters present changed. Although they were hidden by the weapon tripod and could not see Suzumo's tempering technique, the interval between each strike was exactly the same and the frequency was the same. It was as though it was calculated precisely. Many Jin Dan perfected beings had already realized that Su Zimo was Mr. Mo without a doubt. Ordinary weapon refinement masters would not be able to master a tempering technique as such. Furthermore, from material selection to tempering, Su Zimo's movements were as smooth as flowing water. It was like a habit that was filled with beauty. Sima Ji sneered internally and scoffed, "So what if you're Mr. Mo? When we see your spirit-gathering technique later on, we might be able to uncover the secret within." After a long time, the tempering ended. A thin layer of sweat appeared on Su Zimo's forehead as well. With so many spirit ores fused together, the difficulty of his tempering increased significantly as well. After tempering, it was time for the core of weapon refinement, spirit gathering. Su Zimo could clearly sense that Sima Ji and the others from True Fire's sect had suddenly turned nervous and were staring at him intently. "Fu," Su Zimo chuckled. "You want to see my spirit gathering technique? Sure, I'll let you guys see it clearly." Right after, in front of everyone, Su Zimo suddenly did something. He removed the weapon tripod. Apart from Misty Peak, who had expected it and were relatively calm, the other cultivators were shocked. Perfected being Jin Dan, who was closest to Su Zimo, had a change in expression and wanted to dodge instinctively. However, on second thought, everyone realized that something was amiss and coughed gently to calm down. Without any protection, Su Zimo began spirit gathering. When he saw that, even the emperor frowned, not understanding the deeper meaning behind Su Zimo's actions. It was way too risky to remove the weapon tripod for spirit gathering. If he failed to condense the first spirit pattern, it would at most be equivalent to the explosion of a pseudo-spirit weapon with limited lethality. However, if he failed to condense the fourth spirit pattern, the explosion of the spirit weapon would be equivalent to the explosion of a superior-grade spirit weapon with terrifying power. Even if the weapon refinement master was perfected being Jin Dan, he would be severely injured if he was caught off guard. Ji Yaoshue frowned slightly and pursed her red lips with a hint of worry in her eyes. "Sister, don't worry. He's Mr. Mo, he'll definitely be fine." Right then, Demoness Ji came over and held Ji Yaoshue's slightly cold hands, consoling her with a smile. Ji Yaoshue forced a smile, but the worry in her eyes did not lessen at all. Whoosh! Chapter 315. It was clear that Su Zimo took a longer time to condense the third spirit pattern. Right from the beginning, everyone from True Fire's sect, including Tao Feng, had been observing Su Zimo's every move of spirit gathering carefully, unwilling to miss out on a single detail. However, they did not gain much from their observation. They merely noticed that Su Zimo's spirit gathering process was not completed in one go, but intermittent. At times, he had already begun spirit gathering. However, for some unknown reason, Su Zimo would suddenly give up and gather spirit again. There was no pattern to the cycle at all. What's that? Even though Sima Ji and the others had refined weapons for hundreds of years, they had never seen such a strange spirit-gathering technique. Whoosh! A spirit light burst forth and was a little blinding. Just as everyone was confused, the third spirit pattern was successfully condensed. Swoosh! Xian Yi and Lu Hui heaved a sigh of relief and exchanged glances with lingering fear. Although they had heard of Su Zimo's strange spirit-gathering technique in Misty Peak, that was 3 years ago. Furthermore, at that time, Su Zimo could only refine inferior-grade spirit weapons, and it was relatively easy for him to condense a single spirit pattern. Now, Su Zimo had already condensed 3 spirit patterns. Ji Yaoshue relaxed slightly and heaved a sigh of relief as well. At that moment, the expressions of perfected being Jin Dan who were on both sides of Su Zimo changed slightly and they felt uneasy. When they saw that Su Zimo had no intention of stopping after condensing the third spirit pattern, some of the perfected being Jin Dan could not hold on and retreated hurriedly. At that moment, if the spirit gathering failed, it would be equivalent to the explosion of a superior-grade spirit weapon. Perfected being Jean Dan, who was not strong enough, would be injured on the spot and would be in an even more wretched state. There was no need for them to hold on for the sake of their dignity. Of course, there were some perfected being Jean Dan who pretended to be calm and did not leave because of their strength. On the surface, those people were watching Su Zimo refine weapons calmly. However, in reality, they were already tense and had their palms on their storage bags. The moment they noticed anything amiss, they would crush their protection talismans and flee the scene immediately. Just as everyone was feeling uneasy, a blinding spirit light burst forth once more. Ah! Cries of surprise could be heard from the spectator stands in the square. The fourth spiritual pattern. No one had expected that the fourth spirit pattern would be successfully condensed not long after the third spirit pattern was condensed. For spirit patterns, a supreme-grade spirit artifact. Up until now, no one dared to question Su Zimo's ability in equipment refinement anymore. To be able to condense 4 spirit patterns without the protection of the weapon tripod, how confident was he in his spirit-gathering skill? Everyone from True Fire Sect frowned. The situation was completely different from what they had expected. Through Su Zimo's artifact refining, they couldn't see anything special about it. Tao Feng glared at Su Zimo coldly. Gritting his teeth, he thought to himself, a supreme-grade spirit weapon? I'll give it a shot later. It's still unknown who will win or lose. Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations, Mr. Mo. Another supreme-grade spirit weapon has been created. Taoist Master Jean Dan, who had just now dodged, hurriedly returned and cupped his fists in congratulations. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo acted as though he did not hear anything. The spirit saber hovered in midair and the spirit chi in the surroundings had yet to dissipate. However, Su Zimo's gaze was fixed on the ball of spirit chi. To think that it would condense spirit once more. Everyone was stunned. What was Su Zimo trying to do? Right now, it was already a 4-pattern supreme-grade spirit weapon. If it were to condense spirit once more, it would be a perfect spirit weapon. Su Zimo was going to refine a perfect spirit weapon. The crowd was in an uproar. Psst. At the spectator area, many perfected beings Jean Dan gasped in shock. The few perfected beings Jean Dan had just returned and cupped their fists in congratulations. However, before they could stabilize themselves, they fled at an even faster speed. That's AF * King Lunatic. He's truly courting death. Without the protection of the weapon tripod, how dare he forcefully condense the 5th spirit pattern? The group of perfected beings Jean Dan who were pretending to be calm could no longer sit still. With pale faces, they stood up one after another and distanced themselves from Su Zimo. What a joke! If the spirit gathering failed right now, it would be equivalent to the explosion of a supreme-grade spirit weapon. At such a close distance, they would most likely be doomed even if they used their protection talismans. As for the weapon refinement master himself, he would be blown to smithereens. Ji Yaoshua's heart skipped a beat. She had just calmed down but her heart skipped a beat once more. She frowned slightly as well. She had not expected that Su Zimo would go this far. The Emperor and Chief Steward Gu Shi of Sky Treasure Auction House had complicated gazes. Apart from worry, there was more admiration. Although the two of them did not know how to refine weapons, in their opinion, if Su Zimo wanted to refine a perfect spirit weapon, this was indeed the best opportunity. That was because the momentum was already set and he was blessed with fortune. For the past 3 years, Su Zimo would spend a certain amount of time every day to refine weapons without slacking, and his weapon refinement skills were improving steadily as well. Later on, Su Zimo realized that it was truly way too difficult to refine a perfect spirit weapon. Perfection meant that there were no flaws at all. In terms of spirit gathering, Su Zimo had no problems. However, there were 6 steps to weapon refinement. Every single step of the 6 steps had to be flawless in order to refine a perfect spirit weapon. The perfection of every single step was not only dependent on the weapon refinement master's skills, but also on one's mentality, state, and even the external environment. In fact, there was even a hint of fortune. Fortune was something that was ethereal and could only be chanced upon. Su Zimo had been searching for that inexplicable feeling the entire time. Along the way, Su Zimo could vaguely sense an opportunity. Therefore, when he decided to refine a weapon, he had already decided that he was going to refine a perfect spirit weapon this time round. The first 4 steps of weapon refinement, material selection, smelting, molding and tempering, were extremely smooth without any flaws. In terms of spirit gathering, Su Zimo could do it with a 100% success rate. Today, that perfect grade spirit saber was definitely going to be refined. At that thought, Su Zimo felt much more relaxed. Everyone from True Fire Sect, do you guys want to know the secret of the Mo clan's spirit gathering technique? Just as everyone was tensed up, Su Zimo suddenly asked. Everyone was dumbfounded and their jaws nearly dropped to the ground. Which weapon refinement master would not give it their all during an exciting segment like spirit gathering? Yet, Su Zimo was still in the mood to speak. Su Zimo continued, actually, the secret of the Mo clan's spirit gathering technique is very simple. It's to remove one's weapon tripod during spirit gathering and place oneself in a dead end. That way, one can better gather fortune and increase the success rate of spirit gathering. His words were half true and half false. It was true that one had to remove the weapon tripod, but it had nothing to do with fortune. What a load of nonsense! Sima Ji sneered. To him, those words were filled with loopholes and made no sense at all. Su Zimo smiled indifferently and did not refute. In his opinion, the people from True Fire Sect would definitely believe it. That was because most of the time, people were more willing to believe what they saw with their own eyes, even if it was fake. Right then, a bedazzling light burst forth like a blazing sun, filling the skies and illuminating the void such that everyone could not open their eyes. The 5th spirit pattern was successfully condensed. Chapter 316. 5 Spirit Patterns, a Perfect Spirit Weapon. In front of Su Zimo, a bedazzling light burst forth like the first rays of dawn, filling the entire square. The light paused for a moment before retracting rapidly into the saber. No one spoke. The square and the spectator stands were completely silent. Everyone's gazes were drawn to the gigantic spirit saber that was hovering in midair. Their mouths were agape and they were shocked. Even though the spirit saber looked cumbersome and had a handle that did not make sense, it was still a perfect grade spirit weapon after all. Even perfected being Jean Dan, who had lived for hundreds of years, might not be able to witness the creation of a perfect spirit weapon in his entire life. How lucky were they to be able to witness it with their own eyes. Perfected being Yun Shan's gaze was burning. Southern Mountains sect was known for their body tempering and melee combat strength. In the hands of others, the power that the spirit saber could unleash was limited. However, in his hands, it was definitely a terrifying killing weapon. That perfect grade spirit saber had a fatal attraction for him. Everyone from True Fire Sect was shocked at first before confusion appeared in their eyes. Even weapon refinement masters like Sima Ji and Elder Zhang, who had been immersed in the art of weapon refinement for hundreds of years, could not understand what was going on. Logically speaking, Su Zimo's explanation of removing the weapon tripod was complete bullshit. However, the truth was right before their eyes and they had no choice but to reconsider. Perhaps, removing the weapon tripod could truly condense providence and increase the success rate of spirit gathering? After all, that was a method that no one had tried before. Perhaps, this was truly an undiscovered secret of the weapon refinement world? However, on second thought, if it was truly that simple, why would Su Zimo reveal the secret so honestly without hiding anything? No matter how they thought about it, they could not figure it out. However, the truth was that after removing the weapon tripod, Su Zimo managed to condense 5 spirit patterns. Looking at the spirit saber that was hovering in midair, Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief and revealed a radiant smile. That refinement process had expended a large amount of spirit energy, mental state and energy. Right now, he was completely exhausted and almost on the verge of collapsing, drenched in sweat. There was only one last step left. The spirit saber would be completely refined. Su Zimo waved his sleeves, and the spirit saber that had just condensed 5 blades moved horizontally, falling into the cold water that had been prepared long ago. The 6th step was quenching. Normally, when a spirit saber that had been burned red fell into cold water, its temperature would drop rapidly, and it would emit billowing green smoke and an ear-piercing sound. During the exchange of hot and cold, the internal structure of the spirit saber would change and become tougher. The spirit patterns would also completely merge with the saber, becoming indistinguishable. But now, when the spirit saber crafted by Su Zimo fell into the cold water, there was no sizzling sound or green smoke. How could this be? Su Zimo's expression changed slightly and he frowned. At this moment, a change occurred in the cold water. The surface of the water was emitting warm white steam, and bubbles began to appear. It was boiling. The basin of water did not quench the flames on the spirit saber. Instead, it was heated up by the heat emitted by the saber and boiled. Gurgle gurgle. The surface of the water was boiling. In the spectator stands, many Jin Dan perfected cultivators stood up and craned their necks to watch. Ha 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 ha. Right then, Sima Ji burst into laughter. His eyes were filled with mockery as he shouted, Su Zimo, oh, Su Zimo, your perfect spirit weapon is going to be wasted. It's not going to belong to you at the end of the day. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he stared at the boiling water with a dark gaze. No one knew what he was thinking about. What's going on? Someone whispered. Sima Ji replied smugly, if you want to refine a perfect spirit weapon, you can't make any mistakes in the 6 steps of weapon refinement. If you want to refine a saber with 5 spirit patterns, there's no way you can succeed with this ordinary cold water. Su Zimo sighed internally. He knew that Sima Ji was right, he had not considered this matter thoroughly. Of course, he could not be blamed entirely. In all the ancient weapon refinement manuals in Misty Peak, there was no mention of what one had to take note of in order to refine a perfect spirit weapon. Who would have thought that countless years later, a disciple of Misty Peak would attempt to refine a perfect spirit weapon? Sima Ji declared with a mocking expression, if you want to refine a perfect spirit weapon, you'll have to use the rarest and most supreme grade spirit liquids such as Northern Frost Ice, Deep Sea Fiend Oil or Empyrean Spring Water. It's a pity that you don't have any of those things, ha 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 ha. Many Jin Dan perfected cultivators were secretly shocked. Every single one of the 3 items mentioned by Sima Ji were extremely valuable and were not any lower than supreme grade spirit weapons. To think that they would only be used for quenching. Su Zimo pulled the spirit saber out of the boiling water expressionlessly and did not do anything else. When they saw that, everyone knew that Su Zimo did not prepare those things beforehand and could not help but sigh. Seeing that a perfect spirit artifact was about to be born, he didn't expect to fall at the last step. Ugh! Xian Yi sighed with a pained expression. Ji Yaoshua looked at the silent Su Zimo and felt her heart ache. She turned her head hurriedly and shouted, Father, help him, the emperor said in a deep voice, Ming Zhe, head to the palace's treasury. There should be Empyrean spring water there. It's already too late. Sima Ji pointed at the spirit saber in Su Zimo's hands and sneered, if there's no quenching item in 5 breaths' time, that saber will be crippled. Everyone focused their gazes and saw that the spirit patterns on the fiery red saber were already showing signs of dissipating. It was already too late to retrieve the Empyrean spring water. Su Zimo, you're still too young, fu. Sima Ji laughed. He was overjoyed because Su Zimo's fortune would dissipate with this failure and it would be difficult for him to refine perfect spirit weapons in the future. This failure was not only a saber that was crippled, but also a monstrous weapon refinement master. Ji Yaoshua stood up and was prepared to console Su Zimo. Right then, Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and a strange glint flashed through them. Suddenly, he gripped the saber in his hands tightly and held it horizontally in front of his chest with the blade facing downwards. Su Zimo reached out and the blade landed on his palm, slicing across it slowly and forcefully. Since there's no northern frost ice, deep sea fiend oil or Empyrean spring water, I'll use my blood to refine this spirit saber. Sima Ji sneered in disdain, how foolish. How can your blood compare to the Empyrean? Sima Ji couldn't continue. His eyes were wide open and his face was filled with disbelief. How could this be? His bloodline. Poof. Poof. Blood spewed out from the blade and splattered on the fiery red saber. Shing. An ear-piercing sound echoed and thick smoke billowed from the saber. The temperature of the saber plummeted and the spirit patterns that were about to dissipate stabilized and fused with the saber. Furthermore, the 5 spirit patterns were even devouring Su Zimo's blood vaguely. Although the temperature of the saber had plummeted, the color of the saber was gradually deepening. From the fiery red color of the spirit fire, it was gradually turning into a blood-like scarlet. 6th step, quenching was a success. Clang! 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 The saber trembled and let out a series of intense buzzes. It was filled with a thick blood stench that made one uneasy. Su Zimo caressed the saber gently and murmured, since you're refined with my blood, from this day forth, you'll be called blood quenching. As though it was sentient, the saber quietened down. A perfect spirit weapon, blood quenching, was born. Chapter 317. This turn of events was completely out of everyone's expectations. Nobody knew how terrifying the power contained within Su Zimo's bloodline was. Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness and the Void Thunder Manual. He even devoured a dragon and cultivated his bloodline to the Tsunami Blood Realm. His bloodline was much stronger than the Zenith Spring Water. Everyone from True Fire's sect was dumbfounded. Could a person's bloodline compare to rare spirit liquids such as the Northern Frost Ice and Zenith Spring Water? Before that doubt could be resolved, everyone's gazes and minds were drawn to the newly born blood quencher once more. The gigantic and thick saber was scarlet and blinding. 5 patterns were imprinted on the saber like 5 blood grooves. It was menacing and terrifying, resembling 5 narrow blood eyes. Even though the saber was merely placed there quietly, it exuded an iron-blooded killing aura. Sima Ji rubbed his chin and murmured, this saber is fused with so many rare spirit ores. Now that it's refined to perfection with 5 patterns, the power of this saber should not be inferior to Khanate spirit weapons. When they heard that, everyone looked at Blood Quencher with even more fervent and greedy gazes. If supreme-grade spirit weapons were enough to move the hearts of every perfected Jin Dan, then, in that case, a perfect spirit artifact could trigger a bloody battle. If they were not in the capital of Great Zhou and beneath the Emperor's feet, the many perfected Jin Dan cultivators would have already attacked and engaged in a chaotic battle. Sensing the gazes around him and the unusual feeling in the air, Su Zimo understood. A man's wealth was his own ruin. With a flip of his palm, Su Zimo put Blood Quencher away into his storage bag. Mr. Mo, how much are you selling this saber for? Name a price. Right then, perfected being Yun Shan stood up and asked. That's right, Mr. Mo. It's a rare opportunity. Why don't you auction this saber here? It'll definitely fetch a good price, another perfected Jin Dan cultivator said. Su Zimo shook his head. This saber is priceless. Although the perfect spirit weapon was successfully refined, he could not guarantee that he would be able to refine Blood Quencher again if he had to do it all over again. Similar to Khanate spirit weapons, perfect spirit weapons were priceless treasures. Furthermore, Blood Quencher was stained with his blood. Mr. Mo, you must be joking. Everything has a price. Perfected being Yun Shan's refused to give up. Mr. Mo's cultivation realms, let's not talk about it. You might as well sell it. Su Zimo frowned and said impatiently, I'm sorry, priceless means that it's not for sale. Perfected being Yun Shan's expression darkened. If this was before, he would definitely not choose to become enemies with Su Zimo. Perfecteds of the worlds of Jin Dan means. Sima Ji and perfected being Tsang Lang exchanged glances, both of them could see the cold glint in the other's eyes. Su Zimo returned to his seat and gripped a superior-grade spirit stone in his right hand, recovering the spirit energy in his body slowly. He had already set the bait and was waiting for the fish to take the bait. In the square, the 1,000 weapon refinement masters began their second round of weapon refinement. Just now, Su Zimo's weapon refinement had a huge impact on these weapon refinement masters. However, most people were paying attention to Su Zimo's spirit-gathering technique. Misty Peak's Shui Yi, on the other hand, was observing Su Zimo's tempering technique. That was because he knew that Su Zimo's spirit-gathering technique was useless even if others learned it. After comprehending for a moment, Shui Yi felt that he had gained a lot and his confidence was boosted as he began his second round of weapon refinement. Tao Feng, who had refined a superior-grade spirit weapon in the first round, was conflicted. Intuitively and theoretically, he felt that removing the weapon tripod was courting death. However, the truth was that Su Zimo had indeed refined a perfect spirit weapon. After hesitating for a long time, Tao Feng took a deep breath and decided to believe in his weapon refinement technique to begin his second round of weapon refinement. Because he had already refined a superior-grade spirit weapon in the first round, Tao Feng's position on the weapon ranking was already set in stone. Therefore, Tao Feng decided to try refining a supreme-grade spirit weapon for the next 2 rounds. Material selection, smelting, molding, tempering, everything was done in one go. Following his own method, Tao Feng began spirit gathering under the protection of the weapon tripod. First spirit pattern. Second spirit pattern. Third spirit pattern, failed. Tao Feng's expression was terrible. Su Zimo's weapon refinement had affected his mental state immensely. If he were to follow his previous method, he might not even be able to refine a superior-grade spirit weapon. Should I give it a try? What if removing the weapon tripod really increases the success rate of spirit gathering? Similar thoughts appeared in Tao Feng's mind repeatedly and could not be dismissed. The more he wanted to restrain himself, the more he could not. Forget it, I'll give it a try. Since I've already refined a superior-grade spirit weapon, it doesn't matter even if I fail. At that thought, Tao Feng began his third round of weapon refinement. Material selection, smelting, molding, tempering. At the 5th step, spirit gathering, Tao Feng suddenly removed the weapon tripod. That action naturally attracted the attention of countless people. Look, Tao Feng has removed the weapon tripod too. Someone's finally trying it. We'll know if this method works in a while. Taking a deep breath, Tao Feng tried his best to maintain a calm state of mind and adjust to his optimal state before slowly attempting spirit gathering. Whoosh! With a flash of light, the first spirit pattern was successfully condensed. Soon after, another flash of light and the second spirit pattern was successfully condensed. A moment later, another flash of light. The third spirit pattern was successfully condensed as well. Ah! A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Seems like Su Zimo was right. Removing the weapon tripod can truly increase the success rate of spirit gathering. Tao Feng became excited as well and his eyes shone. As long as I condense another spirit pattern, I'll be able to obtain a supreme-grade spirit weapon. At that thought, Tao Feng attempted spirit gathering once more. Right then, Sima Ji, who was at the spectator area, vaguely sensed that something was amiss and instinctively looked towards Su Zimo. At that moment, Su Zimo was watching everything calmly with a faint smile on his lips. Not good. Sima Ji was alarmed and was about to turn around. Boom! In the square, a deafening sound was heard. Tao Feng fell to the ground with his eyes shut. He had already fainted and his body was riddled with holes from the shattered sword shards, bleeding profusely. In Tao Feng's hands was a shattered talisman. It was not hard to imagine that without that protection talisman, Tao Feng would have been blasted into meat paste. Even if Tao Feng managed to survive, it would be difficult for him to recover within a short period of time, let alone enter the ancient battlefield with the people of the 4 ranking lists. This meant that even though Tao Feng left his name on the weapon ranking, his slot to enter the ancient battlefield was empty. Su Zimo, you schemed against True Fire's sect. Sima Ji bolted upright and glared at Su Zimo without concealing the killing intent in his eyes. He's just willing to take the bait. Su Zimo smiled indifferently. The disciples of True Fire's sect are truly adorably silly. Chapter 318. After the matter was over, Su Zimo no longer paid attention to the sect competition in the square. Gripping spirit stones in each hand, he calmed himself down to recover his spirit energy and adjust his state. Although he exhausted his spirit energy and mental state to refine Blood Quencher this time round, his stagnant cultivation realm was showing signs of breaking through. Right now, Su Zimo was at late-stage foundation establishment and was just a step away from perfected foundation establishment. Close to noon, the weapon refinement segment ended and the rankings of the weapon ranking were out. Although Shui Yi did not manage to leave his name on the weapon ranking, he gained some insights from watching Su Zimo's weapon refinement process and successfully refined a middle-grade spirit weapon as well. He was extremely excited. In another 10 years, he would have a chance to compete for a spot on the weapon ranking as well. The jade pillar of the weapon ranking at the northwest corner shone with a mysterious and resplendent light as names appeared one after another. Su Zimo was at the top. After the weapon ranking competition ended, the talisman ranking competition took a short break. For the talisman ranking competition, Misty Peak sent out Leng Ro. Leng Ro was not weak to begin with and was already a 3-meridian foundation establishment cultivator. She was even more talented in talismans and was the only person from Misty Peak who was confident of leaving her name on the talisman ranking this time round. Indeed, after the talisman ranking competition ended, Leng Ro suppressed the crowd and her name was at the top of the jade pillar at the southwest corner of the talisman ranking. To begin with, Leng Ro's appearance was cold and otherworldly, like a fairy that had descended to the mortal realm. Naturally, she attracted even more gazes of admiration now that she was at the top of the talisman ranking. Shui Yi smiled. Congratulations, junior sister Leng. Sister, you're amazing. Both you and Bro managed to get first place. Little Fatty raised his thumb and praised. Leng Ro replied with an indifferent expression, as though the fact that she was number 1 of Talisman Peak did not cause much of a stir in her heart. Chen Mengqi did not know why, but when she saw this scene, she felt uncomfortable. At the spectator area, many perfected Jin Dan thanked and toasted Xian Yi and Lu Hui one after another. Congratulations, congratulations. Double first place, as expected of Misty Peak. Xian Yi pretended to be reserved and said humbly, you flatter me, you flatter me. It's all luck. Although he said that, Xian Yi's heart was already blooming with joy, and he felt that his face was glowing. Lu Hui added, we didn't bring many disciples with us this time round. There's no hope for us to get into the elixir and spirit rankings after this. Fellow Daoist, you're wrong. Misty Peak has already taken first place in both rankings. After the grand competition, their name will be known throughout the great Zhou dynasty. Another Daoist Jin Dan hurriedly said. In reality, Xian Yi both knew that these Jin Dan perfected cultivators had come to express their thanks partly because of the double role champion, but mostly because of Su Zimo. A portion of the cultivators still held the mentality of befriending a tool refiner who could refine a perfect spirit tool. True Fire sect had tried to assassinate Su Zimo multiple times. This was a grudge that was hard to resolve. The feud between perfected being Tsang Lang and Su Zimo was even deeper. Sima Ji and the others from True Fire sect and perfected being Tsang Lang of Iridescent Cloud's palace were expressionless. Occasionally, a cold glint would flash through their eyes as they looked at Su Zimo. Occasionally, they would exchange glances. No one knew what they were plotting. Perfected being Yun Shan of Southern Mountains sect frowned in deep thought. Right then, Su Zimo, who was initially resting with his eyes closed, shuddered all of a sudden. His aura surged and the spirit energy within his body surged, ready to burst out. Everyone sensed something and turned to look. He had broken through. Perfected foundation establishment. Xian Yi and Lu Hui nodded in delight. A moment later, Su Zimo's eyes were still closed. The spirit energy within his body surged, forming a storm that showed no signs of calming down. Instead, it was getting more intense. He's going to unlock his spirit meridian directly. Throughout history, there were often monster incarnates who could make use of the momentum of their breakthrough to unlock a spirit meridian the moment they broke through to perfected foundation establishment. Of course, it was extremely difficult and less than 1 in 10,000 people could unlock a spirit meridian at perfected foundation establishment. Even those with heaven or variant spirit roots would find it difficult to do so unless they cultivated some unique secret skills. Perfected being Tsang Lang's heart skipped a beat. This was a rare opportunity. If he could secretly interrupt Su Zimo's breakthrough process, he would be able to deal a severe blow to the latter's foundation and his future cultivation path would be crippled. As the name suggested, foundation establishment was the process of building one's foundation. It was extremely important and that was the reason why there was the saying of unlocking the 8 meridians. The more spirit meridians one unlocked, the more stable their foundation would be and the greater their chances of breaking through to Jin Dan. In fact, they might even be able to create a Jin Dan phenomenon. If something went wrong during the foundation establishment process, half of their cultivation path would be crippled. As perfected being Tsang Lang pondered, the emperor suddenly waved his sleeves and pulled Su Zimo to his side along with his chair in front of everyone, placing him down gently. Throughout the entire process, Su Zimo was not disturbed in the slightest. The meaning of that action was clear. It was to tell those with ulterior motives to forget about targeting Su Zimo. The emperor was expressionless as he looked towards Iridescent Cloud's palace. Feeling guilty, perfected being Tsang Lang retracted his gaze after making eye contact with the emperor. Boom! Suddenly, a dull thud sounded from Su Zimo's body. Under the cover of his green robes, a spirit meridian was faintly discernible and shone with a bedazzling brilliance. It had only been dozens of breaths and he had already unlocked a spirit meridian. Xian Yi nodded silently. That was the benefit of cultivating ethereal foundation establishment. In the past, there were even people in the sect who unlocked 2 spirit meridians at the moment they broke through to perfected foundation establishment. A look of admiration and relief flashed through the emperor's eyes as well as he nodded. Chapter 319. Su Zimo was still attempting for the 3rd spirit meridian. In the square, the elixir ranking competition was right after the talisman ranking competition. This time round, Misty Peak did not send any disciples and Su Xiaoning of Azure Frost sect was the one fighting. Initially, Su Xiaoning's elixir refinement standards were not enough for her to leave her name on the elixir ranking. However, ever since she obtained that mysterious elixir furnace, Su Xiaoning carried it with her everywhere she went. Each time she refined elixirs, she would become more focused and her mental state would reach its peak state. In this sect competition, Su Xiaoning had once again refined a perfect grade elixir and obtained the number 1 spot on the elixir ranking, shocking the world. With the end of the elixir ranking competition, it meant that the weapon, talisman and elixir rankings had ended. The 30 cultivators who were qualified to enter the ancient battlefield had been chosen as well. Of course, the most important part of the sect competition was still the final spirit ranking competition. The competition for the spirit ranking was not the most common duels between 2 people. Instead, it was a chaotic battle in a completely unfamiliar environment where birds and beasts ran amok and danger lurked everywhere to determine the final 10 experts. The location of the spirit ranking competition was rather particular as well. It was in a dermic weapon of the Emperor of Great Zhou known as the Five Elements Umbrella. It was a world of its own and could accommodate thousands of living beings. It was extremely mysterious. The Five Elements Umbrella was divided into 5 regions: metal, wood, water, fire and earth. The regions were separated by grade 4 killing formations that could not be crossed. For the sake of balance, each sect could send a maximum of 5 cultivators to participate in the spirit ranking competition. Cultivators who chose to participate in the spirit ranking competition would be pulled into the Five Elements Umbrella and would fight in their respective regions until only 2 people were left. By the time all 5 regions were over, the names of the remaining 2 people in their respective regions would be left on the jade pillar of the spirit ranking. After all, it was all for the sake of entering the ancient battlefield. Therefore, the 10 cultivators on the spirit ranking would not continue fighting and there was no distinction between the rankings. Of course, before entering the Five Elements Umbrella, every cultivator would receive a talisman. As long as they crushed the talisman, they would be able to leave the Five Elements Umbrella instantly. That also meant that they would be disqualified from the spirit ranking. There were no 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in this sect competition. Each of the 5 major sects had one 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. The other sects had 2 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators and 1 itinerant cultivator. In total, there were 8 of them. The Emperor would definitely disperse the 8 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators to the 5 major regions and not let them gather in one region. As for the allocation of 3 and 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators, it was a little more casual. Something worth mentioning was that in the complicated environment of the Five Elements Umbrella, even 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators might not have the last laugh. There was no lack of 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in every spirit ranking. All cultivators participating in the spirit ranking competition, step forward. With the Emperor's order, cultivators walked out from the crowd one after another and stood in the sunken region. At a glance, there were about 5,000 people. These 5,000 cultivators were all paragons and elites of the various sections. Chapter 320. If fiend demons were to infiltrate among cultivators, they would be a huge threat. Under normal circumstances, if the Emperor were to recognize the true body of a fiend demon in the capital of Great Zhou, he would definitely strike with thunderous means to kill the latter. However, this fiend demon was from Blood Crow Palace. The Palace Lord of Blood Crow Palace had a mysterious background and was most likely from a forbidden ground in the north region of Tianhuang mainland. If this was a living being from a forbidden ground of Tianhuang mainland, the fiend demon before him would definitely have submitted to the Palace Lord. Even if he was the Emperor of Great Zhou, it would not be appropriate for him to strike. The black-robed man did not cup his fists nor bow, merely saying indifferently, "My Dao title is Blood Cliff. It shouldn't be too late for me to bring the eldest disciple of Blood Crow Palace to participate in the spirit ranking fight." When he heard the words Blood Cliff, the Emperor realized that Gu Shi was right. This should be the original overlord of Black Crow Mountain, the Blood Crow King. Since you're participating in the spirit ranking fight, take the Jade Talisman and enter the Five Elements Umbrella together. The Emperor pondered for a moment before tossing out another Jade Talisman that landed in front of the black-robed man. The Blood Crow King turned slightly, revealing the man behind him. This person was extremely handsome and his lips were curled slightly. He had a haughty expression and his pupils shone with a faint green light in an extremely sinister manner. "Feng Haoyu, it's you." Right then, a furious roar sounded from the square. The disciples of Misty Peak glared furiously. A killing intent flashed through Leng Ro's eyes as well as her expression turned colder. The handsome man behind the Blood Crow King was none other than the defected disciple of Misty Peak, Feng Haoyu. When he heard the words Feng Haoyu, Su Zimo, who was beside the emperor, frowned without opening his eyes. Xian Yi and Lu Hui's expressions changed as they slammed the table and stood up. 3 years had passed since the battle at Dongling Valley, but they still did not know who the mysterious faction that attacked their sect was. Now that Feng Haoyu had appeared, the mysterious faction had finally surfaced as well. Blood Crow Palace. Xian Yi's expression was frosty as he asked in a deep voice, Blood Crow Palace was the one who killed my Misty Peak disciples at Dongling Valley? The Blood Crow King glanced at Xian Yi indifferently and harumphed. So what? Misty Peak wants revenge? A life for a life. You killed my people from Misty Peak, so you must pay with your blood. Lu Hui shouted angrily. The Blood Crow King shook his head and said, How foolish. Your Misty Peak is about to face a catastrophe, and you actually don't know it yet. The young lord of the Blood Crow Palace has perished in Dongling Valley. All of you Misty Peak disciples, prepare to be buried with him. How dare you? Lu Hui's expression changed drastically. Kakik. The Blood Crow King's sinister laughter rang out, making one's hair stand on end. 3 years ago, if not for the fact that the palace lord of Blood Crow Palace was severely injured by the experts of the dragons, Blood Crow Palace would have charged to Misty Peak long ago and would not have waited until now. However, the Blood Crow King naturally would not say such things. Xian Yi asked loudly, Feng Haoyu, how does junior brother Wen Xian treat you? Feng Haoyu sneered. Xian Yi said coldly, and what did you do? How many of your fellow sect mates have you caused the deaths of your master and ancestors? That's treason. Feng Haoyu, I'm going to kill you to take revenge for my fellow sect mates who died in Dongling Valley and for Peak Master Wen Xian. Little Fatty retracted his usual cheeky attitude and declared furiously. That's right, kill him to take revenge for Peak Master Wen Xian. When he heard that, Su Zimo's body shuddered slightly. Although his eyes were shut tightly, there was a hint of violence in his eyes. You guys? Feng Haoyu sneered in disdain, I'm not afraid to tell you guys that I'm at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment right now. Even if you guys join forces, you won't be a match for me. You want to kill me? Hee hee, don't lose your lives in the 5 Elements umbrella. Boom. Right then, a loud bang sounded beside the emperor as 3 spirit meridians shone brightly and spirit energy surged. A figure stood up slowly. His gaze was gloomy, and his entire body emanated an extremely fierce, ghastly, and savage killing intent. The unexpected appearance of Blood Crow Palace almost caused everyone to forget about Su Zimo's existence. Right now, Su Zimo's simple act of standing up caused many cultivators to feel as though a dark cloud was pressing down on them. When the Blood Crow King and Feng Haoyu caught sight of Su Zimo, their expressions changed as well. Good, good, good. The Blood Crow King froze for a moment before snapping out of his stupor and bursting into laughter. To think that you would dare to show yourself. Nobody can save you today. A venomous glint flashed through Feng Haoyu's eyes. His defeat in the hands of Su Zimo back then was definitely the greatest humiliation of his life. Su Zimo was expressionless as he left his seat and walked down the steps. Arriving beside Xian Yi and Lu Hui, he asked softly, Peak Master Wen Xian is dead? Yes, Xian Yi and Lu Hui's eyes dimmed as they nodded. Lu Hui said, back in Dongling Valley, Elder you self-destructed Jin Dan. By the time senior brother Wen Xian escaped with Ji Qingtian and the others, he was already severely injured. That battle was way too tragic. To be fair, if not for the unforeseen event that was Su Zimo, everyone from Misty Peak would have been wiped out without a single survivor. Lu Hui's eyes reddened as she said softly, for the past 3 years, senior brother Wen Xian's injuries have yet to recover. Instead, they are getting worse and his face is haggard and he's extremely skinny. We all know that after the battle at Dongling Valley, he has been living in endless pain and self-blame, living a life worse than death. 3 months ago, senior brother Wen Xian passed away with regrets. Su Zimo remained silent. Even though Peak Master Wen Xian's attitude towards him had always been bad, Su Zimo could not help but lament at the thought of Peak Master Wen Xian's later years. Xian Yi said, Wen Xian had two unfulfilled wishes. One of them was that he had misjudged Feng Haoyu back then and allowed him to learn the three great secret skills. However, he did not manage to retract Feng Haoyu's cultivation in the end. As for the second wish, since you're here as well, I'll tell you about it, Xian Yi sighed softly. Xian Yi sighed softly. You also know that Wen Xian has always been prejudiced against you because of other matters. Before he died, his mind was no longer clear. However, he still wanted to see you and talk to you to seek your forgiveness. He even said that he wanted to impart the secret skills of Misty Peak to you personally. It's a pity, sigh. Su Zimo's heart ached as he grit his teeth and the cold glint in his eyes intensified. I'll help Peak Master Wen Xian fulfill his wish. After saying that, Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and turned around. He glared at Feng Haoyu in the square with a cold gaze and said coldly, Feng Haoyu, I didn't manage to kill you back then. Today, I'll take your dog life. Many cultivators in the square and spectator area were stunned. Before anyone could understand what Su Zimo meant by that, he had already turned around and bowed deeply. Your Majesty, Su Zimo of Misty Peak is participating in the spirit ranking competition. The Emperor frowned. Ji Yaoshua's expression changed and she looked worried. Everyone could see that Su Zimo had only unlocked 3 spirit meridians while Feng Haoyu was at 5 meridian foundation establishment. There was a huge disparity in strength and there was no chance of victory. Furthermore, they were in the 5 elements umbrella where the environment was harsh and dangerous. Su Zimo was not only facing Feng Haoyu, there were others as well. Chapter 321. When they heard that Su Zimo was going to participate in the spirit ranking competition, many perfected Jin Dan at the spectator area felt their hearts skip a beat as a cold glint flashed through their eyes. Perfected being Tsang Lang and the elders of True Fire sect were thinking about how to deal with Su Zimo when a great opportunity presented itself before them. To everyone, Su Zimo was purely courting death by entering the 5 elements umbrella as a 3 meridian foundation establishment cultivator. If they could kill Su Zimo within the 5 elements umbrella, they would be able to eliminate all future troubles. However, in the eyes of perfected being Yun Shan and the other cultivators, they would be able to obtain the perfect spirit weapon, Blood Quencher, as long as they killed Su Zimo. In reality, Su Zimo was at the center of the storm the entire time. However, this was the great Zhou dynasty with the might of the emperor suppressing the entire place. Even if someone harbored ill intentions, no one would dare to act rashly. However, Su Zimo's decision was equivalent to placing himself in danger and giving everyone a chance to kill him and snatch his treasure. Perfected being Tsang Lang and Sima Ji exchanged glances and walked towards the square with a tacit understanding. Perfected being Tsang Lang whispered, Si Yutang, the 5 of you, listen up. Once you enter the 5 elements umbrella, find the cultivators of True Fire sect and join forces with them. No matter who is in the same region as Su Zimo, you have to kill him with all your might. Do you hear me? Yes. Si Yutang and the others nodded. Chen Mengqi lowered her head with a conflicted expression and did not say anything. Although she had long severed ties with Su Zimo, she still could not bring herself to kill Su Zimo personally. Perfected being Tsang Lang narrowed his eyes and said coldly, Mengqi, I don't care what your relationship with Su Zimo was in the past. However, he killed your fellow sect mates and even wants to go against me. You should know what to do. Yes, Chen Mengqi lowered her head even further and replied. When perfected being Tsang Lang heard Chen Mengqi's perfunctory tone, he could not help but reveal a hint of malice. However, his tone turned calm as he said indifferently, if you can't do it, I can arrange for someone else to replace you. Hearing this, Chen Mengqi panicked. Although she was at 4 Meridian Foundation establishment, she had a chance to leave her name on the spirit ranking. If someone else were to replace her and enter the 5 Elements umbrella, they would completely lose the right to compete for the spirit ranking and would not be able to enter the ancient battlefield. Chen Mengqi quickly said, Master, don't worry. I know what to do. Yes. Only then did perfected Song Lang nod his head in satisfaction. On the other side, He Jiang smiled ghastly and said, Don't worry, Master. Once I encounter Su Zimo, I'll definitely take his life and avenge my younger brother. Perfected Yun Shan was also talking to the Southern Mountain sect's successor disciple, Shi Jian. However, Shi Jian frowned slightly, as if he was a little conflicted. After a moment of silence, he nodded. The Blood Crow King said in a deep voice, I'll give you a mission. Sir, please speak. If we really meet Su Zimo in the 5 Elements umbrella, capture him alive. Remember, I want him alive, not dead. Understood. On the spectator stand. Xian Yi shook his head. Zimo, you can't go. The difference in strength between the two of you is too great. Furthermore, he's cultivated the 3 great secret skills of Misty Peak while you've only cultivated Ethereal Foundation Establishment. There's no advantage to speak of. Furthermore, once you enter the 5 Elements umbrella, you'll have way too many enemies. Zimo, everyone's eyes are on you right now. Blood Quencher is a perfect spirit weapon that's enough to make everyone lose their minds. That's right. Lu Hui persuaded as well, Zimo, you're still young. Don't be rash and act on impulse. Su Zimo replied, Peak Masters, there's no need to persuade me any further. I've already made up my mind. I'm not rash. I just want a clear thought so that I can repay my debts. If Feng Haoyu doesn't die, I won't be able to rest easy. Xian Yi and Lu Hui exchanged glances and could see the helplessness in each other's eyes. Ji Yaoshue could sense Su Zimo's determination and knew that it would be useless even if she tried to persuade him. Turning around, Ji Yaoshue looked at the emperor with a pleading gaze. Although the emperor could not openly side with Su Zimo, he could still do it easily with some tricks. To be fair, the emperor was curious. Initially, he wanted to make use of the spirit ranking competition to see what realm Su Zimo was at. That night, the assassination of the 2 perfected Jin Dan of True Fire sect and Dai Su's death were both strange and hinted that Su Zimo's strength was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. However, when he saw Ji Yaoshue's pleading gaze, the emperor's heart softened as he sighed internally. Forget it, forget it. She did not say anything the entire time and even moved her chair back to Guxi's side. Su Zimo obtained a jade talisman from the emperor and came before Ji Qingtian and Little Fatty. He secretly stuffed a storage bag into their hands and whispered, There's a supreme-grade spirit weapon and a supreme-grade defensive spirit weapon in the storage bag. When they heard that, Ji Qingtian and Little Fatty's eyes lit up. He was a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator to begin with and had 2 supreme-grade spirit weapons, one for offense and one for defense. As long as he was not surrounded, no one should be a match for him in a one-on-one fight. Little Fatty blinked his beady eyes and was about to ask when Su Zimo beat him to it. Yours is a gigantic axe and shield. Little Fatty beamed, those 2 weapons were clearly custom-made for him. With the gigantic axe and shield, his strength was not to be underestimated. The emperor's eyes flickered and immediately after, a thick rod the size of a finger flew out from his glabella. When the thick rod landed in the air above the square, it expanded rapidly and formed an umbrella-shaped weapon. With a bang, 5 different colored umbrellas representing metal, wood, water, fire and earth opened at the top of the umbrella handle, covering most of the firmaments. Dermic weapon, 5 Elements umbrella. In the square, the 5,000-odd cultivators who wanted to take part in the spirit ranking competition raised their heads instinctively. Everyone's gazes landed on the umbrellas of different colors and could not help but sink deep into them as their hearts skipped a beat. That piece of umbrellas seemed like a world of its own. Everyone, you're ready. The spirit ranking competition has officially begun. The moment the emperor said that, the 5 elements umbrella began to spin. The first to be pulled in by the 5 elements umbrella were the 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in the square. The 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators of the 5 major sects entered a region of the 5 elements umbrella respectively. Ji Qingtian was in the water region. Including Feng Haoyu, there were 4 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators left in the square. This meant that there would only be a single 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator in a region of the 5 elements umbrella. With that, the pressure on the 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in that region would be minimal and they would basically be able to last until the end to obtain a spot on the spirit ranking. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 4 figures rose into the air and entered the 4 regions. Su Zimo glared at Feng Haoyu and watched as the latter entered the metal region. Apart from Feng Haoyu, there was another 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator in the metal region, He Jiang of True Fire sect. As for Ji Qingtian, he was the only 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator in the water region. When they saw the distribution, everyone knew that the emperor was intentionally taking care of Misty Peak. The 5 elements umbrella continued to spin. The cultivators in the square flew into the world of the 5 elements umbrella in a black mass. A massacre was about to begin. Chapter 322. The remaining 5,000-odd people soared into the air at the same time and were pulled in by the rotating 5-colored umbrella. At a glance, it was densely packed, as though the 5,000-odd people were being devoured by another world. More than half of the 100,000-odd cultivators watching the battle were focused on Su Zimo. After all, Su Zimo's appearance in this sect competition had caused too much of a stir. Furthermore, before the spirit ranking competition, the square was already filled with an oppressive killing intent that many factions were trying their best to restrain. As long as they entered the 5 elements umbrella, outsiders would not be able to interfere and conflicts would definitely erupt. Whichever region Su Zimo entered, the conflict there would be the most intense. Look, junior brother Su has entered the water region, Shui pointed to the skies and said excitedly. Leng Ro's expression relaxed as she heaved a sigh of relief. The water region had Misty Peak's 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, Ji Qingtian. Furthermore, there were no other 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators and it was relatively safe with the least threat. As long as Su Zimo and Ji Qingtian could regroup in time, they should be able to hold out until the end in the water region if they joined forces. Perfected being Sung Lang and the others frowned. It was clear that the emperor's arrangement was to protect Su Zimo. The Blood Crow King sneered. Xian Yi and Lu Hui looked at the emperor gratefully but could not express it clearly. After the 5,000-odd cultivators entered the 5 elements umbrella, the emperor's glabella shone with a divine light, releasing an invisible energy fluctuation that landed on the 5 elements umbrella. Gradually, the 5 elements umbrella stopped spinning. Right in front of everyone, the surface of the umbrella expanded in all directions, as though it was truly fusing with the firmaments. Ah, look! Senior brother, he is there. Wow, a golden condor just flew through the skies. On the surface of the umbrella, 5 different regions shone with 5 different lights, forming a gigantic light screen. Through the light screen, the cultivators outside could see everything within the 5 elements umbrella clearly. The flowers, trees, birds, and beasts within were all visible. In fact, every single action of every cultivator could be seen. Cultivators who were participating in the sect competition for the first time were shocked when they saw such a scene. Look, there's Su Zimo. Hee, his luck is really bad. He actually fell into the forest. Everyone who entered the 5 elements umbrella would land at random. After landing, if 2 people were extremely close to each other, it was very common for a fight to break out. Of course, this situation wasn't too bad. Descending into the forest was the most deadly. The forest could be considered as the lair of spirit demons and was filled with danger. There were all sorts of powerful spirit demons lurking within, and no one knew if they could make it out alive once they were trapped in the forest. If they were unlucky and landed beside a powerful spirit demon, they might even die on the spot before they could even crush their escaped jade talisman. There seems to be a spirit lion not far behind Suzumo. It's already eyeing him. If the #1 weapon refinement master of the Great Zhou dynasty is bitten to death by a spirit demon in the 5 elements umbrella, this will definitely become the biggest joke in the cultivation world, hehe. A gentle breeze blew past, and the leaves behind him swayed gently, making a sound. Suzumo seemed to be completely unaware. All of a sudden, a massive black shadow lunged forward and opened its bloody mouth, revealing its white fangs. It roared from the depths of its throat and bit towards Suzumo's neck viciously. The menacing face of the spirit lion seemed to be right in front of everyone. Ah! A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd in the square. Many cultivators seemed to have seen the gory scene of Suzumo's throat being bitten. Seeing that the spirit lion was about to bite him, Suzumo did not even turn back. His arms seemed to be boneless as he swung it behind like a gigantic elephant trunk. Piak! The elephant trunk struck the lower jaw of the spirit lion heavily, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Right in front of everyone, the spirit lion was sent flying at an even faster speed. By the time the spirit lion landed on the ground, its jaw was already smashed and it was unrecognizable. Its body twitched uncontrollably and it was clear that it was doomed. As for Suzumo, he continued walking forward as though nothing had happened and did not even turn back. Everyone in the square was dumbfounded. How strong did he have to be to shatter the jaw of a spirit demon? Before that question could be answered, another bloodthirsty wolf lunged forward and was killed by a single punch from Suzumo. Its brain was smashed and it died on the spot. Right after that, right in front of everyone, Suzumo rampaged through the forest that was filled with danger and beasts without any reservations, leaving behind a trail of blood and corpses of spirit demons. A massive spirit crocodile that was covered in spikes and armor had just surfaced from the water after lying in ambush for a long time. Suzumo stomped on it and a gigantic footprint appeared on the head of the spirit crocodile. The massive body of the spirit crocodile sank to the bottom of the water and its corpse attracted other spirit crocodiles to devour it. Before long, it was reduced to a pile of bones. Within the forest, Suzumo had no intention of concealing his tracks and barged through without any fear. Holy F***CK, what's going on? Is that person a weapon refinement master? F***CK, that's a ferocious beast in human form. In the square, more than 100,000 Foundation establishment cultivators were dumbfounded. Didn't they say that the forest within the 5 elements umbrella was the most dangerous? Didn't they say that the spirit demons within the 5 elements umbrella were extremely strong and were close to the peak of Foundation establishment realm? I'm guessing that the Emperor of Great Zhou is afraid of trouble and casually caught some massive wild beasts to stuff into the 5 elements umbrella to scare people. Yes, that's possible. Spirit demons aren't easy to catch. Those wild beasts are everywhere. To think that he's the Emperor. How stingy. Many cultivators in the crowd whispered and looked at the Emperor of Great Zhou strangely. Although the cultivators discussed softly, the Emperor of Great Zhou could naturally hear them clearly given his cultivation. Although he was expressionless, the corners of his eyes twitched uncontrollably. In reality, the spirit demons within the 5 elements umbrella were indeed strong and were not to be underestimated. However, those spirit demons were the most ordinary of demon beasts. The strength of demon beasts was directly related to their bloodline. To put it simply, the strength of ordinary demon beasts at the peak of Foundation establishment realm was far inferior compared to ancient remnant beasts. The difference between ordinary demon beasts and pure-blooded ferocious beasts was even greater. But now, Suzumo had cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, the Void Thunder Manual, and even devoured half a dragon. His physique was so strong and terrifying that there was no way those ordinary spirit demons were a match for him. If they captured some ancient remnant beasts, they might be able to pose a threat to Suzumo. Indeed, there were no ancient remnant beasts within the Five Elements umbrella. However, the Emperor of Great Zhou could not be blamed for that. Every single ancient remnant beast was usually protected by a powerful fiend demon. How could they be captured so easily? One of the cultivators was right. Within the Five Elements umbrella, those spirit demons were not facing a human, they were facing a ferocious beast in human form. Chapter 323. Among the spectator area, the calmest person towards Suzumo's performance was Demoness Ji. Was he already this strong in melee combat 3 years ago in the Blood Fiend's tomb? Gu Shi asked with a voice transmission. Not really. Ji Yaoshue used the unique voice transmission technique of the fiend's sex and replied, that bookworm is even stronger than 3 years ago. At the spectator area, some of the Jin Dan perfected beings discussed softly as well. So what if his physique is strong? He can't defend against the sharpness of a flying sword. That's right. Why would he fight a cultivator in melee combat? The Emperor sat alone in the middle and frowned as he looked at Suzumo, who was speeding away. That lad's direction, what is he trying to do? Five Elements umbrella, water region. After charging out of the forest, Suzumo identified the direction carefully and brushed his storage bag, retrieving a flying sword and injecting spirit energy into it. Buzz! The sword trembled and 4 bedazzling spirit lights shone on it. A supreme-grade flying sword. Right then, someone exclaimed from the side. Suzumo glanced at that person without paying much attention. Leaping up, he stepped onto the flying sword and sped forward on it. Shoo! The sound of a sharp blade tearing through the air echoed behind him. Suzumo narrowed his eyes and tilted his head slightly. A cold glint flashed past his ears with a chilling killing intent. This sword strike was completely aimed at taking his life, without the slightest intention of holding back. Suzumo paused in his tracks and turned around. Not far behind him, the cultivator who exclaimed earlier stood there with a murderous glint in his eyes and a murderous aura. You want to kill me? Suzumo's gaze turned cold. Typically speaking, one would not kill someone within the Five Elements umbrella unless there was a deep grudge. All they had to do was force the other party out of the escaped Jade Talisman. After all, perfected Jin Dan and the Emperor of the Great Zhou dynasty were watching the battle outside. It was not wise to kill someone rashly, and it was easy to make enemies. However, Suzumo had not expected that apart from Iridescent Cloud's palace, True Fire's sect and Feng Haoyu, there were other cultivators who wanted to kill him. Suzumo, I won't ask for your blood quencher either. As long as you hand over the supreme-grade flying sword in your hand, I'll spare your life. This person was dressed in gray robes and was naturally confident because he was at 4 Meridian Foundation establishment. You want a supreme-grade flying sword? No problem. Suzumo nodded and slapped his storage bag, changing the topic. However, I'm afraid you won't be able to take it. Whoosh! 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 Suzumo waved his sleeves and 3 sword beams shot out. They split into 3 directions and surrounded the gray-robed cultivator, instantly sealing off his escape route. Ah! The gray-robed cultivator's expression changed as he exclaimed, 3 supreme-grade flying swords. In the square outside the Five Elements umbrella, a commotion broke out at the spectator area as well. Most of the perfected Jin Dan cultivators present did not have a single supreme-grade spirit weapon after cultivating for hundreds of years, let alone the Foundation establishment cultivators present. But now, as a 3 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, Suzumo was able to summon 3 supreme-grade flying swords at once. The gray-robed cultivator did not panic in the face of danger as spirit energy surged wildly within his body. Bursting forth with his 4 Meridian spirit energy, he retracted his flying sword and collided viciously against an incoming supreme-grade flying sword. Break. Immediately after, the gray-robed cultivator conjured a hand seal and released a spirit art, blocking another supreme-grade flying sword. Against the third supreme-grade flying sword, the gray-robed cultivator's left arm shone with a bedazzling spirit light. A middle-grade defensive arm guard was revealed. Waving his arm, the gray-robed cultivator blocked the path of the third supreme-grade flying sword. Those who dared to enter the 5 Elements umbrella and fight for a spot on the spirit ranking were all geniuses of the various sects. None of them were easy to deal with. The crowd could not help but exclaim when they saw the gray-robed cultivator release 3 consecutive moves to defend against the incoming supreme-grade flying swords from 3 different directions. At the spectator area, Perfected Jean Dan of Starpoint sect stroked his long beard and nodded repeatedly, saying indifferently, "Not bad." He didn't embarrass Starpoint sect. The moment he said that, the situation on the battlefield changed within the 5 Elements umbrella. The moment the gray-robed cultivator blocked the 3 supreme-grade flying swords, Su Zimo swiped his storage bag expressionlessly and 3 more flying swords appeared before him. Buzz! The swords quivered gently and 4 spirit patterns shone. Another 3 supreme-grade flying swords. The crowd was in an uproar when they saw that. Many Perfected Jean Dan cultivators' eyes turned red as they wished they could charge into the 5 Elements umbrella and snatch Su Zimo's storage bag to check out the treasures within. In his final year at Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop, after Su Zimo could refine supreme-grade spirit weapons, he would refine one every day. In other words, the number of supreme-grade spirit weapons in his storage bag had already exceeded 300. Among those 300, there was a set of supreme-grade flying swords that Su Zimo had customized for himself. The 6 flying swords before them were only a portion of the set. On the battlefield, the gray-robed cultivator had just blocked 3 flying swords. Before he could catch his breath, he was met with another wave of sword lights. "Why are there more?" Poof. The gray-robed cultivator only had time to finish his sentence before his chest was pierced by a flying sword. Fresh blood gushed out and he fell to the ground with an indignant expression. However, the greed in his eyes had yet to dissipate as he spat out blood and murmured, "Supreme-grade flying sword, supreme-grade." When he saw that, Perfected Jean Dan of Starpoint sect harumphed with a terrible expression. No matter what, the gray-robed cultivator was the one who attacked Su Zimo first. Even if he died in the 5 Elements umbrella, he could not blame anyone else. Su Zimo waved his sleeves and recalled the 6 supreme-grade flying swords before continuing to speed into the distance. Not long after he set off, another 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator blocked his path. Without a second word, Su Zimo waved his hand and 6 supreme-grade flying swords pierced forward. The person on the other side had just summoned his flying sword when his vision blurred as 6 flying swords with 4 spirit patterns flew towards him. Frightened, he tossed away the flying swords in his hands hurriedly and took out a gigantic shield. Channeling his 4 Meridian spirit energy, the shield expanded and blocked in front of him. Clang! The 6 flying swords collided with the shield at the same time, creating a loud sound. Poof! Spitting out blood, the person was sent flying with a pale face. Still in midair, he crushed the jade talisman in his hands. The jade talisman released a power that brought the person away from the 5 Elements umbrella instantly. The cultivator landed on the square slowly with blood still dripping from his mouth. Perfected Jean Dan of Water Mirror sect hurried forward and fed the person an elixir. "Master, I've let you down." "I." The cultivator's expression dimmed and he hung his head dejectedly. Perfected Jean Dan of Water Mirror sect sighed and said helplessly, "It's not your fault. It's all because Su Zimo is way too despicable. He's clearly bullying others by summoning 6 supreme-grade flying swords at once and smashing them down. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to take it either." Although this person was at 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator and his spirit energy was much stronger than Su Zimo's, the difference between them was made up for by the 6 supreme-grade flying swords. Apart from Jiqing Tian, there were no other 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in the 5 Elements umbrella. There was no one who could stop Su Zimo. As time passed by, not only did those cultivators fail to kill Su Zimo, they were even teleported out one after another and lost the right to fight for a spot on the spirit ranking. At that moment, some of the perfected Jin Dan frowned and gradually realized that Su Zimo's direction seemed a little strange. Chapter 324. Su Zimo has already traversed more than half of the water region. What is he trying to do? By the looks of it, he seems to be heading towards the edge of the region. The water region was right beside the wood region. After crossing the wood region, it would be the metal region where Feng Haoyu was. Could it be? Many cultivators had bewildered looks in their eyes as they thought of a possibility. However, on second thought, that conjecture was truly ridiculous. Xian Yi and Lu Hui exchanged glances and could see the seriousness in each other's eyes. They had some understanding of Su Zimo's personality as well. This was a man with a ferocious heart who was decisive in killing. If Su Zimo were to say that he wouldn't be able to rest until Feng Haoyu was dead, there was a possibility that he would cross the regions and hunt down Feng Haoyu, until he died. However, was that possible? Notwithstanding the fact that it was still unknown who was stronger between the two of them, the grade 4 killing formations between the regions were enough to stop anyone. Grade 4 killing formations were beyond the scope of spirit energy and were filled with boundless dermic powers. Even if perfected Jin Dan were to barge in, his essence spirit would be destroyed. 5 Elements umbrella, water region. Su Zimo sped the entire way without concealing his tracks and attracted more and more cultivators. There were already more than 100 of them. Almost all of them were 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators and their cultivation realms were higher than Su Zimo's. Even further away, there were other cultivators rushing over. As everyone expected, the moment Su Zimo stepped into the 5 Elements umbrella, he became the target of everyone. Not far ahead was the border of the wood and water regions. A gigantic light screen was erected between the heavens and earth, extending into the distance on both sides in a boundless manner. Ripples of light swirled on the light screen in a mysterious, bedazzling manner. It emitted a shuddering aura, as though it was warning the cultivators within the 5 Elements umbrella not to approach. Su Zimo slowed down and gradually came to a stop. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 Foundation establishment cultivators surrounded Su Zimo from all directions with unfriendly expressions and killing intent, sealing off all of his exits. Outside the crowd, there were even more cultivators watching coldly, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Su Zimo's face was expressionless. His gaze swept across the crowd and fell on a familiar figure. He paused for a moment. Chen Mengqi was also among the 100 cultivators surrounding him. Chen Mengqi looked at Su Zimo with a conflicted expression and sighed gently. Su Zimo, even a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator wouldn't be able to survive the encirclement of more than 104 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. You won't be able to escape. Su Zimo looked indifferent. He didn't even look at her. He sneered, "Some people, I advise you, don't look for trouble. Get as far away as you can." Clang! 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 Su Zimo waved his sleeve and a sword light flew out from his storage pouch and hovered in front of him. Everyone looked over and couldn't help but tremble. 18 flying swords. A total of 18 flying swords were arranged neatly and shone with a resplendent spirit light. All of them were supreme-grade flying swords. Kill him and those supreme-grade flying swords will be ours. A Foundation establishment cultivator's eyes were bloodshot and he had already lost his rationality. Everyone, attack together. Don't let him crush the Jade Talisman. Right then, a 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator of True Fire Sect hollered and summoned his flying sword. The sword shone brightly with a frosty sword chi. The 100-odd foundation establishment cultivators around him were already eyeing him covetously to begin with. Now that they heard that holler, they attacked without hesitation. Shoo! 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 Instantly, countless spirit lights flashed and the flying swords formed a gigantic sword net in midair, enveloping Su Zimo. Outside the 5 Elements umbrella, many perfected Jin Dan were dumbfounded when they saw Su Zimo summon 18 supreme-grade flying swords. The emperor narrowed his eyes and exclaimed softly. He noticed that no matter if it was the length, width, or patterns on the 18 flying swords, they were all exactly the same. Could it be? The emperor's gaze shifted to Xian Yi. Xian Yi of Misty Peak was a rare sword formation master, and Misty Peak's hexagonal sword formation was famous in the Great Zhou dynasty as well. Before the emperor could finish his thought, he heard exclamations from the crowd. Heavens, what's that? It seems to be a formation. Sword formation master. Su Zimo is a sword formation master. In the water region, Su Zimo controlled the 18 supreme-grade flying swords and split them into 3 groups of 6, shuttling through the air and leaving behind streaks of sword chi. In the blink of an eye, the 6 flying swords formed a hexagonal sword formation that shone with a bedazzling light. Hexagonal sword formation. 3 hexagonal sword formations spun around Su Zimo like 3 gigantic roulette wheels that danced in the air, blocking all the incoming flying swords. Everyone, don't be discouraged. Su Zimo must have expended his spirit energy to control 18 flying swords and has no strength left to retaliate. If we persist, he'll definitely die. The moment the Foundation Establishment cultivator of True Fire sect said that, Su Zimo's voice sounded coldly and calmly. Instant thunder. As Su Zimo controlled the flying swords, he conjured a hand seal and pointed to the skies. Snap! A gigantic bolt of lightning descended and smashed into the crowd, bursting forth with a blinding flash. Ah! More than 10 Foundation Establishment cultivators were caught off guard and were struck by the lightning, collapsing to the ground with tragic cries. Even though the True Fire sect cultivator had crushed a protection talisman in advance to block the lightning strike, he looked wretched with a horrified expression and a lingering fear in his heart. He was right. Su Zimo did not have any excess spirit energy to release spirit arts. However, Su Zimo's power of thunder originated from his bloodline, and the power it contained was even more terrifying than his 3 meridians spirit energy. Go! With a wave of his hand, Su Zimo sped forward with a hexagonal sword formation, repelling the incoming flying swords and charging into the crowd. Poof! 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 A blood mist spewed and the stench of blood filled the air. Some of the cultivators were already injured after barely withstanding the might of the instant thunder. How could they have any strength left to defend against the hexagonal sword formation formed by supreme-grade flying swords? It was unstoppable as it crushed everything in its path. The alert cultivators crushed their jade talismans first and left the 5 Elements umbrella. Even though they were indignant, they managed to preserve their lives. As for the greedy cultivators who were still eyeing Su Zimo's supreme-grade spirit weapon, most of them died to the hexagonal sword formation. There was also a group of strong cultivators who were severely injured even though they managed to defend against the power of the hexagonal sword formation and lost their right to compete for the spirit ranking. In the blink of an eye, more than 104 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivators were killed by Su Zimo and were in a mess. In the square, more than 100,000 Foundation Establishment cultivators gasped with their mouths agape. The scene before them had completely exceeded their imaginations. Nobody expected that a 3 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivator would be invincible within the 5 Elements umbrella and cause such a bloody storm. One of the cultivators lamented, "I once heard that the strength of a sword formation master is almost invincible among cultivators of the same level. Seems like that wasn't an exaggeration at all." With 18 supreme-grade flying swords and a Grade 2 sword formation, Su Zimo's combat strength was no weaker than a 5 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivator. Chapter 325. Go! Right then, a figure rushed over with lightning speed, exuding a powerful aura. Beneath his robes, 5 spirit meridians shone with surging spirit energy. It was the only 5-meridian foundation establishment cultivator in the water region, Misty Peak, Ji Qingtian. Shoo! Before Ji Qingtian arrived, he flicked his sleeves and a sword beam shot out. What was strange was that this sword light had just flashed and then disappeared. The flying sword had also disappeared without a trace. The sword light just now seemed to be an illusion for everyone. Everyone, watch out! That's one of Misty Peak's secret skills. One of the foundation establishment cultivators shouted, his face turning pale with fright. The moment he said that, his shoulder was pierced by a sharp blade and he fell backwards with blood gushing out. Right from the beginning, that person had not discovered any traces of the flying sword. There were 3 levels to ethereal sword. The first was afterimage and the second was nothingness. Right now, Ji Qingtian had summoned his flying sword but it was hidden and almost undetectable. That was the state of nothingness. Of course, nothingness did not mean that there were no traces, it was merely difficult to detect. Ji Qingtian released his 5-meridian spirit energy and coupled with Misty Peak's secret skill, ripples appeared in the void wherever his flying sword passed. Appearing and disappearing unpredictably, blood flashed and tragic cries rang out. The 100-odd foundation establishment cultivators surrounding Su Zimo were already sliced into pieces by the hexagonal sword formation to begin with. Now that they were reaped by Ji Qingtian's flying sword, they were utterly defeated and scattered. More and more cultivators gathered in the surroundings but none of them dared to make a move recklessly. When Ji Qingtian saw that Su Zimo was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. Thankfully, it's not too late. Thank you, senior brother Ji. Su Zimo nodded and thanked him. Ji Qingtian looked around and whispered, there are still hundreds of foundation establishment cultivators in the water region. If we're trapped, we'll be easily injured as well. Junior brother Su, follow me closely. Let's leave this place first. Su Zimo shook his head and said, Senior brother Ji, you should leave quickly. Don't worry about me. Junior brother Su, what do you mean? Ji Qingtian frowned in confusion. Pausing for a moment, Ji Qingtian came to a realization. Junior brother Su, you don't have to worry. I'll definitely protect you with me around. Su Zimo turned his head and looked at the huge light screen not far away, remaining silent. Junior brother Su, you, Ji Qingtian's lips gradually parted, as if he had thought of something. Su Zimo nodded with a smile and retracted his 18 supreme-grade flying swords, walking towards the gigantic light screen with firm footsteps. Before participating in the spirit ranking competition, Su Zimo had already understood that the 5 elements umbrella was his only chance to kill Feng Haoyu. After the sect competition ended, Su Zimo had no chance to make a move in the capital with Feng Haoyu beside the Blood Crow King. If he were to enter the ancient battlefield in a completely foreign environment, nobody knew what would happen. Therefore, the moment Su Zimo entered the water region, he had already made a decision to kill Feng Haoyu even if he had to cross 2 grade 4 killing formations. Ah! At the spectator area, Ji Yaoshua's expression changed starkly as she stood up and exclaimed. Seems like Su Zimo is truly going to cross regions. Fufu. He's too young after all and won't listen to advice. He's truly courting death and can't blame anyone else. Ji Yaoshua turned around hurriedly, wanting the emperor to transfer Su Zimo out. Perfected being Song Lang noticed Ji Yaoshua's actions and suddenly said, Third princess, the spirit ranking competition has already begun. Every drop of water and every inch of wood in this formation was formed by the condensation of unparalleled magic power. Even a single drop of water or leaf was enough to destroy a foundation establishment cultivator. Countless trees fell from above, covering the skies. Beneath him, the current surged with torrential waves. Su Zimo was in a dire situation. Right then, Su Zimo closed his eyes. At that moment, his 5 senses were useless. If he wanted to leave the valley alive, he could only rely on his spirit perception. The might of killing formations was immense. However, things would always move in the opposite direction when pushed to an extreme. The flaws in killing formations were also the most obvious among the few types of formations. Su Zimo rode on his flying sword and dodged in the extremely narrow space. Occasionally, he would speed up and dodge the gigantic waves. Occasionally, he would stop abruptly and dodge a branch that fell from the front. Under everyone's shocked gazes, Su Zimo advanced carefully in the gap between the water and wood regions formed by endless dermic powers, getting closer and closer to the wood region. Chapter 326. The torrents and falling trees created by the supreme dermic powers shook the world with a majestic aura. Even as bystanders, everyone could feel the apocalyptic might as though they were personally present. In the square, some of the cultivators who were not involved were pale with fright. That was the might of a grade 4 killing formation. That was the power of Dharma. Be it spirit energy, spirit arts, or weapons, none of them could compare to dermic powers, dermic arts, or weapons. Only after advancing to nascent soul realm and cultivating an essence spirit could one come into contact with the secrets of Dharma. Even perfected Jin Dan could not come into contact with it. Amidst the endless falling trees and torrential waves, the figure that was advancing slowly was so insignificant that it even looked petty, as though he could be reduced to ashes at any moment. However, for some reason, everyone felt an unprecedented shock in their hearts that was even more intense than the impact of a grade 4 killing formation. What sort of will was that? Even if the path ahead was filled with dangers and killing intent, it could not stop his will. If I want to kill you today, I won't let you live past tomorrow. Peak Master Wen Xian's wish had to be fulfilled by someone eventually. In the Battle of Dongling Valley, many Misty Peak disciples died in a bloodbath. That blood debt had to be repaid by someone eventually. I won't be at ease if you don't die. Dai Yu was not wrong, there was a ferocious tiger residing in Su Zimo's heart. However, it was still in a deep slumber. The moment Dai Yu brought Su Zimo into cultivation, the ferocious tiger had already woken up. Now that the ferocious tiger was awake, it naturally wanted to devour humans. In the square and spectator area, more than 100,000 cultivators watched the figure that was advancing through the grade 4 killing formation with great difficulty. Nobody spoke and it was silent. How did he do it? As Jining Zhenjuan, even the emperor could not understand what was going on. Hee, this nerd is always full of surprises. He's getting more and more interesting. Ji Yaoxue pursed her lips into a smile as her watery eyes curved into crescents. Gu Shi gave a fake smile and rolled her eyes at her with ripples in her beautiful eyes. Look, he's already passed through. Finally, under everyone's watchful eyes, Su Zimo crossed from the water region to the wood region. The people of Misty Peak heaved a sigh of relief and looked excited. The crowd began to discuss again. From the looks of it, perhaps only 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators can stop Su Zimo. Among the 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators in the Wood region, there is Shi Jian of the Southern Mountains sect and an itinerant cultivator. Su Zimo must be exhausted after passing through a grade 4 killing formation. If he bumps into a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, he'll probably be in deep trouble. At the spectator area, perfected being Yun Shan of Southern Mountains sect was secretly delighted as he thought to himself, seems like Su Zimo's storage bag is going to land in the hands of my Southern Mountains sect. Su Zimo passed through the Tier 4 killing array and arrived at the Wood region. Although the journey was more daunting than dangerous, Su Zimo's mental state and spirit energy were extremely depleted and his green robes were already drenched in sweat. This was a grade 4 killing array. If it was a grade 5-1, Su Zimo reckoned that even with his sharp spirit perception, his body would not be able to react in time and he would die inside. It was way too dangerous. Behind him was a grade 4 killing array and there were no cultivators nearby. Withdrawing 2 superior-grade spirit stones from his storage bag, Su Zimo sped forward while recovering his spirit energy. He had to recover his spirit energy to its peak before the next grade 4 killing array. Therefore, Su Zimo chose to conserve his spirit energy and did not ride on his sword. Instead, he sprinted on the ground without slowing down. Along the way, Su Zimo saw many signs of fighting. In fact, some cultivators did not manage to crush their jade talismans in time and died here. Their corpses were still warm. Eh. A moment later, a soft exclamation sounded. A figure flashed in front of him and blocked Su Zimo's path. Su Zimo raised his head and saw that it was the legacy disciple of Southern Mountains sect, Shi Jian. He was one of the favorites for the spirit ranking this time round and was said to be at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment as well. I'm Shi Jian. Greetings, Mr. Mo. To Su Zimo's surprise, Shi Jian was different from the other cultivators and did not attack directly. Instead, he cupped his fists and greeted him. When Su Zimo saw that this person looked honest, his impression of him improved and he nodded. Mr. Mo, are you in the wood region as well? This is the first time I'm seeing you. There was no way Shi Jian knew that Su Zimo had passed through the water region. Su Zimo did not explain and merely smiled. Shi Jian looked uneasy and hesitated, as though he was embarrassed to say something. What's the matter? Su Zimo raised his brow slightly. Shi Jian hesitated for a moment before saying, well, I'm also here for Mr. Mo's blood quencher. Su Zimo's gaze turned cold. Shi Jian bowed hurriedly and explained, but that's not my intention. I can't disobey my master's orders. Please forgive me, fellow Taoist. When Su Zimo saw that Shi Jian was sincere and did not seem like he was lying, his expression softened and the killing intent in his heart dissipated gradually. Shi Jian continued, Mr. Mo, don't worry. I won't harm your life. Furthermore, Mr. Mo, in exchange, I'll do my best to help you obtain a spot on the spirit ranking. There were 2 spots in every region. Shi Jian's words meant that he would do his best to help Su Zimo obtain the other spot in the wood region. Su Zimo smiled without saying anything. Shi Jian did not know what happened in the water region or Su Zimo's motive. When he saw Su Zimo's smile, he misunderstood and pondered for a long time before saying, Mr. Mo, I know that perfect spirit weapons are priceless, but there's not much I can do. How about this? I'll help you obtain a spot on the spirit ranking and I'll give you all the treasures in my storage bag. Let's fight. There's no need to say anything else. Su Zimo said indifferently with a calm expression. Ah. Shi Jian was stunned for a moment and asked in a daze, Mr. Mo, you want to fight me? If I'm not wrong, you've just advanced to 3 Meridian Foundation establishment while I'm at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment. You're not my match. Su Zimo smiled gently. If you defeat me, Blood Quencher will naturally be yours. After pondering for a moment, Shi Jian nodded with a confused expression, as though he could not understand Su Zimo's intentions. Shi Jian took out a Chaos Essence steel rod from his storage bag that was etched with complicated patterns. After injecting spirit energy, 3 spirit patterns shone on the rod. It was a superior-grade spirit weapon. Mr. Mo, you've got to be careful. Southern Mountains sect has strong physiques and we specialize in melee combat. As though he was afraid that Su Zimo did not know of his prowess, Shi Jian reminded him once more. Su Zimo nodded. After a while, Shi Jian saw that Su Zimo was still empty-handed without any flying sword or other spirit weapons. He coughed gently and reminded kindly, Mr. Mo, if you're up against cultivators like us who specialize in melee combat, you've got to make use of weapons like flying swords to stop us from closing in and try your best to widen the distance. Shi Jian gestured seriously and said, Look, with your current state, I'll be able to reach you in the blink of an eye after sprinting a few steps. By then, it'll be too late for you to summon your flying sword. You'll be defeated in a single move. Outside the Five Elements umbrella, more than 100,000 cultivators watched everything with dumbfounded expressions. Shui could not help but lament, "Brother Shi is truly an honest man." Chapter 327. Su Zimo did not continue to explain to Shi Jian. His eyes lit up and he suddenly took a step forward. Boom! The earth quaked with that single step. That was the stance of the plow heaven stride. At its limits, it could even plow a ravine in the skies. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already arrived before him. Shi Jian was alarmed and did not have time to think. Sensing the aura, he struck instinctively. The Chaos Essence iron rod in his hands shone brightly as he struck it towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he reached out with his soft palm to receive it. Su Zimo's palm looked pale and weak with long fingers. Placing it gently on the incoming rod, he exerted strength and curled it up. Ah! Shi Jian exclaimed as his palm split open and fresh blood oozed from it. In that moment of distraction, the Chaos Essence iron rod in Shi Jian's hands landed in Su Zimo's hands. The gigantic iron rod was pressed against Shi Jian's throat, emitting a chilling aura. As long as Su Zimo exerted a little strength, his throat would be smashed apart. As he said, both parties only used a single move in their exchange. However, the one who was defeated was not Su Zimo, but himself. Shi Jian was completely dumbfounded throughout the entire process and was defeated in a daze. Even when Su Zimo returned the Chaos Essence iron rod to him and stuffed it into his hands, Shi Jian did not manage to react and merely said instinctively, "Thank you." Shi Jian was simple and honest to the point of being adorable. He did not have much enmity towards Su Zimo and was merely forced to do so. Naturally, Su Zimo would not kill him. "How many cultivators are left in the wood region?" Su Zimo asked. Shi Jian's mind was in a mess as he tried to recall what happened earlier on. "I can't say for sure, but I'm certain that more than half of the cultivators have been eliminated." Su Zimo frowned. In other words, if he stayed in the wood region for too long, by the time he passed through the wood region, passed through a Tier 4 killing formation, and entered the metal region, it was very likely that it would be too late. This was because when there were only 2 people left in an area, it meant that the chaotic battle in that area had ended. The remaining 2 would also be teleported out. Therefore, Su Zimo had to enter the metal region as soon as possible to have a chance of killing Feng Haoyu. During this short delay, some cultivators had already noticed the commotion and were watching from afar. It seemed like they were about to gather. If he were to be surrounded by these cultivators again, he might not have enough time. With this thought in mind, Su Zimo's figure flashed as he entered the dense forest beside him. "Mr. Imo, where are you going?" Shi Jian asked. "Metal region." After a while, Su Zimo's voice came from the depths of the forest. "Mr. Imo, you really like to joke. Going to the metal region? Why don't you go to heaven?" Shi Jian rubbed the back of his head and muttered before turning to leave as well. After walking for a while, when there was no one around, Shi Jian suddenly withdrew his Chaos Essence steel rod from his storage bag with a grim expression, as though he was facing a great enemy. Shi Jian's eyes widened as he stared at the Chaos Essence steel rod in his hands. After a moment, he slapped his head in realization. "I get it now. In that exchange earlier on, my rod was snatched away by Mr. Imo and he returned it later on. Mr. Imo is truly a good person." Shi Jian lamented. At the spectator area, perfected being Yun Shan of Southern Mountains sect was speechless as he covered his face and sighed. In the wood region, vegetation was lush and lush. Ancient trees, shrubs, vines and grasslands were connected one after another, filled with vitality and lush greenery. Of course, under that seemingly peaceful vitality, there was also endless killing intent. The forest was almost a paradise for spirit demons and one could die here if they were not careful. Some cultivators had just discovered Su Zimo's tracks when Su Zimo darted into the forest before they could attack. Helpless, everyone could only chase after him. Those involved could not see clearly. In the eyes of the many cultivators outside the Five Elements umbrella, there were cultivators who were lured into the depths of the forest but could not make it out. Those cultivators would often lose track of Su Zimo as they chased after him. By the time they snapped back to their senses, they would have already been surrounded by spirit demons. Is Su Zimo a monkey? He's darting around and we can't find him if we're not careful. At the spectator area, some of the Jin Dan perfected beings grumbled indignantly when they saw their disciples being toyed around. When he heard that, Xian Yi snickered internally. Back when he first joined Misty Peak, Su Zimo's skills were truly comparable to a monkey and he could traverse the steep cliffs as though they were flat ground. The Emperor frowned slightly. He realized that he could not see through Su Zimo at all. How could a scholar from a remote town in a vassal state possess such capabilities? Within the wood region, Su Zimo did not spend much time to reach the edge of the wood region and barge into the grade 4 killing formation. He was still as careful as ever, advancing towards the metal region step by step with great difficulty as though he was treading on thin ice. It was only at this moment that everyone realized that Su Zimo could truly cross 2 regions and 2 killing formations to barge into the metal region. However, was it realistic for him to kill Feng Haoyu? Just now, many cultivators had caught a glimpse of Feng Haoyu's killing scene. It was a complete suppression. He had unlocked 5 spirit meridians and possessed the 3 great secret skills of Misty Peak. Furthermore, he seemed to have mastered some unique secret skills that were mysterious and sinister. All of those methods displayed how terrifying Feng Haoyu was. He could completely crush all the other cultivators. For such a person, let alone killing him, there was no way he could kill him. Given Su Zimo's current strength, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens if he wanted to defeat him. Perfected Lord Mingzhe said in a low voice, close in. If Su Zimo can get close to Feng Haoyu, he might have a chance of winning. It's too difficult, the Emperor shook his head. Feng Haoyu possesses ethereal wings. Be it in terms of speed or agility, he far surpasses sword kinesis flight. There's no way Su Zimo can get close to him. Pausing for a moment, the Emperor continued, in other words, even if Su Zimo can get close, he'll only be able to defeat Feng Haoyu at most. How can he kill him? Perfected Lord Mingzhe nodded as well. Even if Feng Haoyu was no match for Su Zimo, he had an escape jade talisman in his hands and could crush it to escape at any moment if he sensed that something was amiss. There were not many cultivators left in the metal region. Apart from Feng Haoyu, another 5 meridian cultivator, He Jiang of True Fire Sect, was among them as well. Both of them were mortal enemies with Su Zimo. Even if Su Zimo could barge into the metal region, it was impossible for him to kill Feng Haoyu under such circumstances. Auntie Gu, take a guess as to what the outcome will be? Demoness Ji asked softly. Gu Shi's gaze swept past the Blood Crow King not far away and she shook her head. The outcome inside isn't important. Now that he's offended that person from Blood Crow Palace, Su Zimo is doomed. Chapter 328. The chaotic battles in the 5 regions were gradually coming to an end. Of the 1,000-odd cultivators in each region, there were less than 100 left. The remaining cultivators were the strongest and had the most tricks up their sleeves. At the edge of the metal region, there was a gigantic, gorgeous light screen that connected the heavens and earth. There was no one nearby and even spirit demons would not linger here. All of a sudden, a figure passed through the light screen and walked out slowly. His green robes were almost drenched in sweat and he could not conceal the fatigue in his eyes. After passing through the killing formation, the green-robed cultivator's eyes were still closed as he enjoyed the peace and tranquility that he had not experienced in a long time. He heaved a long sigh of relief and experienced the feeling of surviving a calamity. A long time later, he opened his eyes and looked into the distance with a deep gaze, murmuring softly, "I'm here." It was impossible to survive to the end by hiding in the Five Elements umbrella. There were countless birds and beasts in every region of the Five Elements umbrella. If an outsider were to linger in a certain region for too long, they would definitely be hunted down by spirit demons and a battle would break out. Naturally, their whereabouts would be exposed. Even if they were lucky enough to escape the initial chaotic battles, when there were only 50 people left in a region, they would be teleported to the center of the region for the final battle no matter where they were. This was the final battle and everything depended on one's strength. At the center of the metal region, 50 streaks of light flashed and figures appeared out of thin air one after another. Most of them were stained with blood and some were slightly injured. There were only a few people who were dressed neatly and were calm. Among them, there was a corpse that was teleported here as well. It laid on the ground motionlessly with a plump body. Its face was a mess of flesh and blood and its appearance could no longer be seen clearly. There was a ghastly wound on its neck. In reality, if it was truly a corpse, it would not have been teleported here. But now that the 50 cultivators were suddenly gathered in one place, all of them were extremely nervous and retreated as though they were facing a great enemy. None of them paid attention to the corpse on the ground at all. True Fire Sect's He Jiang held a small tripod in his left hand and a flying sword in his right. Surveying his surroundings, his gaze landed on someone and froze with a strong killing intent. Hands behind his back, Feng Haoyu had an arrogant expression as he looked around casually. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and laughed. Initially, the attention of the other cultivators was on Feng Haoyu and He Jiang, the two 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. Now, the crowd couldn't help but follow their gazes when they saw the strange expressions on their faces. Not far away, a green-robed cultivator stood there with a calm expression. He had delicate features and looked like a weak scholar who could not even trust a chicken. Su Zimo. Mr. Mo. Cries of surprise came from the crowd. The flesh on the face of the corpse on the ground suddenly moved. Su Zimo, I didn't expect you to last until now. You've really impressed me. Feng Haoyu laughed and clapped his hands. With the appearance of Su Zimo, the situation on the field suddenly changed subtly. Many cultivators began to have their eyes on Su Zimo. A perfect spirit artifact was simply too attractive to everyone. If they could snatch Su Zimo's storage bag and crush their escaped jade talismans to leave this place, it wouldn't be a problem even if they lost the right to fight for the spirit ranking. Su Zimo, you killed my younger brother. I'll make you pay with your blood. He Jiang's voice was bone-chilling with endless hatred. The surrounding cultivators summoned their flying swords one after another and glared at Su Zimo with greed in their eyes. Feng Haoyu observed the situation calmly and shrugged his shoulders gently, saying in a relaxed manner, "Seems like I don't have to make a move anymore. Su Zimo, you're the target of everyone right now and nobody's going to help you." The moment Feng Haoyu said that, the corpse on the ground suddenly leaped up. Its plump body was unusually agile as it rolled on the ground and arrived before a cultivator. Reaching out with its chubby palm, it crushed the escaped jade talisman on the cultivator's waist. That person was stunned and before he could react, he was teleported out of the 5 Elements umbrella by a beam of light. Reaching out with its sleeves, the corpse wiped off the flesh on its face and the fake bloodstains on its neck, revealing a chubby, round face. It was Little Fatty of Misty Peak. Little Fatty pointed at Feng Haoyu and cursed, "What **T are you spouting, you traitor? I'm not human." Little Fatty ran to Su Zimo's side and whispered, "Bro, don't panic. I'll help you. If not, we'll crush the jade talisman and leave." In reality, if not for the fact that he was worried that Su Zimo would be fighting alone, Little Fatty's plan of pretending to be a corpse and taking advantage of the situation would not be a problem for him to last till the end. Little Fatty was not the only one who could think of such a method. However, he was the only one with the thickest skin. There were more than 100,000 cultivators outside, as well as the perfected Jean Dan of the various sects watching. Which cultivator would be shameless enough to pretend to be dead and get away with it? Su Zimo patted little Fatty on the shoulder and gestured for him to be at ease before turning around and saying coldly, "Feng Haoyu, cut the crap. Hand over your life." The moment he said that, Su Zimo walked towards Feng Haoyu at a moderate speed. "Go!" The eyes of a cultivator at the front lit up as he suddenly attacked. Wielding a flying sword with one hand, he stabbed it towards Su Zimo's glabella while conjuring a spirit art with his other hand. Su Zimo executed Divine Steed Fleeting and sped up, leaving a series of afterimages in midair. Dodging the incoming flying sword by a hair's breadth, he arrived before the person instantly. The person merely felt his vision blur as a gigantic fist descended and smashed heavily on his head. The next moment, the person felt a sharp pain in his head and lost consciousness completely. Everyone was shocked. In a single exchange, this 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator died on the spot before he could even conjure a spirit art. Previously, they heard that Su Zimo was strong in melee combat, but they did not expect him to be this strong. Everyone dispersed and distanced themselves from Su Zimo. Su Zimo's burning gaze was fixed on Feng Haoyu the entire time. His killing intent intensified and he exuded a sinister aura, as though he was a ferocious beast that had walked out of a sea of corpses. Swoosh! Suddenly, a pair of shimmering wings extended from Feng Haoyu's back and he soared into the air, looking at Su Zimo with a fake smile and mockery in his eyes. On the other side, He Jiang of True Fire Sect hollered and his 5 Meridian spirit energy burst forth. The flying sword in his palm quivered gently and shone with 3 spirit lights. It was a superior grade flying sword. Go! Hiding far away, He Jiang pointed forward. There seemed to be a thin layer of flames on the sword as it streaked through the void, causing the air to burn with a series of explosions. Shoo! 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 There were at least dozens of flying swords that shot over with a chilling sword chi and a menacing sharpness. There was only a single target, Su Zimo. Little Fatty froze on the spot. When he saw that, he felt his scalp prickle and his body turn cold. Bro, hurry and crush the Jade Talisman. Little Fatty hollered. The only way to survive such a ferocious attack was to crush the escaped Jade Talisman. Chapter 329. Naturally, Su Zimo would not crush the Jade Talisman. For the sake of this moment, he did not hesitate to cross 2 major regions and 2 grade 4 killing formations. Everything he experienced in between was 100 times more dangerous than this. There was no way he was going to give up. Buzz! Su Zimo waved his sleeves and 18 flying swords flew out from his storage bag. Trembling violently, each of them shone with 4 bedazzling spirit lights. A total of 18 supreme-grade flying swords. The eyes of many cultivators lit up. Even if they could not get their hands on the perfect spirit weapon in this battle, it would be worth the trip if they could get their hands on a supreme-grade flying sword. Perfected Lord Ming Zhe said in a deep voice, although there aren't many cultivators attacking this time round, they are much stronger. Furthermore, the 2 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators are way too threatening. Su Zimo's hexagonal sword formation won't be able to defend against them and he's going to be injured. The Emperor nodded as well. Given their cultivation realms, there was naturally no mistake in their judgment. However, both of them miscalculated something. The 18 flying swords did not form the hexagonal sword formation, but the candlelight sword formation that Hakka Dojin brought out from the mysterious ruin. Clang! 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 The 18 flying swords sped through the air, leaving behind streaks of sword chi as the light of the formation pattern shone brightly. Candlelight sword formation. Su Zimo hollered softly and pointed forward. Immediately after, the 18 flying swords gathered together with their tips pointing outwards, forming a gigantic sword-shaped disc. Like a blazing sun, it released 18 streaks of sword chi that were blinding and sharp. Ah! The surrounding cultivators narrowed their eyes and exclaimed. The moment the sword formation was released, everyone felt a sharp pain in their bodies and their 5 senses were even blurry. They could not tell if the pain was due to the heat released by the blazing sun or the cutting pain of the sword chi. The Foundation establishment cultivators in the square could not feel it clearly. However, perfected being Jean Dan's expression changed starkly when he saw the candlelight sword formation. Even through the 5 elements umbrella, everyone could sense the terror of the candlelight sword formation. This sword formation is so strong. The Emperor's gaze froze as he secretly gasped. Gu Shi was stunned as well. Her beautiful eyes stared at the 5 elements umbrella without blinking. Her upper body leaned forward slightly, revealing her snow-white chest. However, she was completely unaware, as if she wanted to see through the origins of the candlelight sword formation. As Jining Jinjuan, they could vaguely sense another kind of aura from the sword array. Boundless, desolate, simple, ancient, distant, faintly discernible. It was an aura from the ancient times, or even further back. As the only sword formation master present, Xian Yi had a different feeling towards the candlelight sword formation. Through the sword marks left behind by the flying sword, Xian Yi could tell that the candlelight sword formation released by Su Zimo was a grade 2 sword formation. Although they were both grade 2 sword formations, the candlelight sword formation was much stronger than the hexagonal sword formation. Come to think of it, even if they did not form a sword formation, the gathering of 18 supreme-grade flying swords was a force that could not be ignored. Now that he had condensed such a terrifying sword formation, what kind of power would it erupt with? Clang! Clang! 2 flying swords collided against the candlelight sword formation and let out 2 crisp sounds. Immediately after, right in front of everyone, the 2 flying swords were minced into pieces by the candlelight sword formation and scattered all over the ground. Pust! The crowd outside the 5 elements umbrella was in an uproar. Those 2 flying swords were not scrap metal, they were middle-grade flying swords. The moment the middle-grade flying swords collided against the candlelight sword formation, they were minced and destroyed. Clang! 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 The candlelight sword formation danced and circled around Su Zimo, emitting an extremely sharp sword chi. The sword beam shone brightly and sent all the incoming flying swords flying. The middle-grade flying swords shattered on the spot and were reduced to scrap metal. Only the superior-grade flying swords were intact. However, they were also sent flying by the power released by the candlelight sword formation, dimming and falling to the ground. This was the first time Su Zimo released the candlelight sword formation against an enemy, and its power was indeed far beyond his imagination. Little Fatty's mouth was agape and his jaw almost dropped to the ground. Although the light of the candlelight sword formation dimmed significantly after receiving such an impact, it was still circulating. The sword hum did not stop and instead became clearer, piercing through metal and rocks. The circulating sword formation seemed as though it wanted to tear the firmaments and shred heaven and earth. When the cultivator who attacked saw that, he was scared out of his wits and kept quiet out of fear, afraid that Su Zimo would toss the sword-shaped roulette over. Right at that moment, Su Zimo closed his eyes and his mind calmed down instantly, emptying out everything in his mind. Time seemed to have frozen around him, but Su Zimo's thoughts were racing. Every single choice he made would affect the final outcome. It was as the Emperor and the others had said, it was impossible to kill Feng Haoyu within the 5 elements umbrella. It wasn't that Su Zimo was not strong enough. Instead, it was because Feng Haoyu had an escaped jade talisman in his hands and could leave at any moment. Therefore, there was only a single chance to kill Feng Haoyu. If he missed, Feng Haoyu was no fool and would definitely crush the jade talisman to escape. Although the power of the candlelight sword formation was great, it might not be able to kill him in a single strike. Firstly, Feng Haoyu was at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment and his eyes were light green. He seemed to have cultivated some sort of secret skill of Blood Crow Palace and might even have other trump cards. Secondly, Feng Haoyu had cultivated ethereal wings and was extremely agile. There was a high chance that he could avoid the sharpness of the candlelight sword formation. While the candlelight sword formation might not be able to kill Feng Haoyu, it had a high chance of killing the other person. All of a sudden, Su Zimo opened his eyes and sped towards Feng Haoyu with divine steed fleeting. However, he pointed his arm at He Jiang of True Fire Sect and hollered softly, "Instant thunder." Snap! There was a deafening bang. A bolt of lightning as thick as an adult's arm descended on He Jiang's head. However, the latter was extremely alert and crushed a protection talisman first. Crack! 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 The power of instant thunder collided with the protection talisman and the barrier formed by the talisman shattered. Clang! Clang! Before He Jiang could catch his breath, the candlelight sword formation released an extremely sharp sword chi that streaked over and tore through the void, as though it was tearing a gigantic piece of cloth apart. He Jiang's expression changed and his eyes were filled with endless fear. It was only at this moment that he came to a realization. Just now, Su Zimo had no intention of killing him with that bolt of lightning, he merely wanted to keep him on the spot. The true killing move was the incoming candlelight sword formation. The candlelight sword formation was so close that it was already too late for him to dodge. He Jiang's flying sword was already destroyed by the candlelight sword formation. Thankfully, he still had a superior-grade weapon tripod in his hands that could fight. Whoosh! He Jiang channeled the spirit energy in his dantian wildly and his 5 spirit meridians shone with spirit light within his body. Spirit energy surged like a river and the weapon tripod shone brightly, expanding instantly and blocking in front of He Jiang. At the spectator area, many perfected Jin Dan watched everything unfold with rapt attention. Sima Ji and the others from True Fire Sect were nervous and could not control their emotions. In fact, they even stood up involuntarily. Although they were perfected Jin Dan, they knew too little about the candlelight sword formation and could not determine the outcome of that head-on clash. Chapter 330. The candlelight sword formation transformed into a blazing sun that shone with endless sword chi that shot towards He Jiang's weapon tripod. Clang! 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 The sword chi struck the walls of the tripod wildly with an ear-piercing sound. The light released by the candlelight sword formation was bedazzling and almost drowned He Jiang and his weapon tripod. Boom! It was yet another deafening sound. The sword light dimmed and the candlelight sword formation finally dissipated. With a whoosh, the 18 flying swords scattered from midair and fell to the ground. All the cultivators outside the 5 elements umbrella focused their attention. The gigantic weapon tripod was still shielding He Jiang's body, emitting a weak glow. Although it was filled with white sword scars, it was not destroyed. After all, it was a superior-grade spirit weapon that was only a grade lower than supreme-grade spirit weapons. He Jiang hid behind the weapon tripod and was safe. However, his face was pale and his gaze was dull. Everyone from True Fire Sect heaved a sigh of relief. Thank goodness, thank goodness. How fortunate. Sima Ji, Elder Zhang and the others exchanged glances and were relieved. As long as he was alive, it was fine if he suffered a setback. He Jiang is a legacy disciple of True Fire Sect after all. He does have some capabilities. Some of the perfected Jin Dan nodded silently. Of everyone present, only perfected Lord Mingzhe, Gu Shi, and a few other Jining Jinjuan did not say anything. The emperor was expressionless and shook his head. Right then, a series of blood scars appeared on He Jiang's initially pale face and gradually expanded. Shing! He Jiang's clothes were torn apart without warning as well. It was as though he was sliced by countless sword chi and was covered in wounds. It was a ghastly sight. Suddenly, the commotion in the crowd quietened down. Under countless horrified gazes, Jiang's face, neck, arms, legs and every single part of his body spewed out blood, forming a gigantic blood mist. Within the blood mist, Jiang collapsed to the ground with a dull gaze. He was no longer breathing. Although the weapon tripod blocked the sharpness of the candlelight sword formation, Jiang was still sliced by the sword qi released by the sword formation until he was covered in wounds. Dead. Jiang, a legacy disciple of True Fire's sect who could have secured a spot on the spirit ranking, died in the 5 Elements umbrella just like that. He did not even have the time to release his escaped jade talisman. Sima Ji and the others swayed and sat back down weakly, feeling dizzy. Initially, True Fire's sect was guaranteed a spot on the elixir, weapon, and spirit rankings. However, He Xing was killed by Su Zimo in the capital before the sect competition. Tao Feng attempted the Mo clan's spirit gathering technique and was severely injured. Now, even He Jiang was dead. True Fire's sect had suffered a huge setback in the sect competition this time around. Look! Someone pointed at the light screen of the 5 Elements umbrella and exclaimed. Within the metal region, Su Zimo charged towards Feng Haoyu at an extremely fast speed, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the air, confusing the eyes of others. Feng Haoyu sneered. If they were on the ground, he would truly be wary of Su Zimo. But now, he possessed ethereal wings and could stand in the air like perfected Jin Dan without the need for any external objects. He could also maneuver around with ease in the air and Su Zimo could not get close to him at all. Ethereal wings was a secret skill after all. Even if Su Zimo could use sword kinesis flight, he was much slower than Feng Haoyu in terms of speed and agility. Buzz! Waving his sleeves, Feng Haoyu shot out 3 flying swords, all of them superior-grade flying swords. The fact that he was able to possess 3 superior-grade flying swords at Foundation Establishment Realm was proof of how highly Blood Crow Palace regarded him. Ever since he was defeated by Su Zimo at Misty Peak, he had been cultivating wholeheartedly and tried to wield multiple flying swords. Even though he could not conjure a sword formation, the power of his ethereal sword was not to be underestimated. The light on the swords shone brightly before disappearing suddenly. Level 2 of ethereal sword, nothingness. Su Zimo did not stop and continued to shorten the distance between him and Feng Haoyu. His eyes shone brightly as he placed his left middle finger and thumb together to form a strange hand seal. The moment the hand seal was formed, the spirit energy in Su Zimo's dantian churned wildly. 3 spirit meridians appeared faintly and spirit energy surged into the hand seal. Boom! Suddenly, a gigantic crack appeared in the skies as a golden palm reached out and descended from above, exuding a sacred aura as though it wanted to suppress all evil. Fiend Suppression Seal. The spectator area was filled with perfected Jin Dan and naturally had sharp eyes, all of them could sense the power of that hand seal. In midair, Feng Haoyu was oblivious to it and hollered, "Good timing. I'll let you witness my methods." Controlling the 3 flying swords in midair to stab towards Su Zimo's charging figure, Feng Haoyu withdrew a white bone staff from his storage bag. Biting the tip of his tongue gently, Feng Haoyu spat out a mouthful of essence blood onto the bone staff. The moment the essence blood landed on the bone staff, it disappeared mysteriously, as though it was devoured by the bone staff. Immediately after, streaks of blood appeared on the bone staff one after another, resembling the tiny blood vessels of a living being. They were crystal clear and exuded an extremely evil aura. Feng Haoyu waved the bone staff in his hand and mumbled something in an obscure language. His eyes flickered with a faint green light, which was strange and frightening. Condense. Gripping the bone staff tightly, Feng Haoyu pointed at the descending golden palm and hollered softly. Roar! A huge blood-colored skull condensed out of thin air. The holes in its eyes emitted a dark red light. It opened its mouth and let out a roar that shook the heavens and the earth at the giant golden palm in the air. Amidst the roar, the blood-colored skull smashed towards the golden palm viciously, as though it wanted to devour it entirely. When he saw that, the emperor was expressionless, but his eyes flashed with a glint. With a grim expression, perfected Lord Ming-Zhe sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. Indeed, he's the successor of a forbidden ground. Gu Shi's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and the faint smile that originally hung at the corner of her mouth also disappeared. On the battlefield, although the 3 flying swords had vanished, 3 faint ripples appeared in midair, resembling the ripples caused by reeds crossing the surface of water. Su Zimo lowered his body and was almost sprawled on the ground. Like an anaconda, he slithered forward without slowing down at all. As though he had expected it, one of the flying swords suddenly changed its trajectory and stuck close to the ground, slashing towards Su Zimo's back. Poof! A flash of blood appeared. Was victory already decided? Everyone focused their gazes and saw that Su Zimo merely paused for a moment before continuing to charge forward. A wound appeared on his back, but it did not injure his vitals. Without the help of 18 supreme-grade flying swords, Su Zimo won't be able to conjure a sword formation. He's going to be beaten back to his original state. As long as this drags on, Su Zimo's wounds will increase and he'll definitely lose if he bleeds too much. Many cultivators discussed in hushed tones. The emperor narrowed his eyes slightly. There were some details that even perfected being Jean Dan might not be able to see clearly. However, the 5 elements umbrella was his dermic weapon and he could sense every single change within. To his shock, the emperor discovered that there was not much blood on Su Zimo's back. The muscles around the wound squirmed and fused together immediately. There were signs of recovery. What a terrifying physique. The emperor's heart skipped a beat. Chapter 331. The Fiend's suppression seal was almost completely drained of Su Zimo's spirit energy. Su Zimo did not even bother to check out the outcome of the clash between their secret skills. As he sprinted, he withdrew a gigantic bow from his storage bag with his right hand and 3 arrows were already nocked, aiming at Feng Haoyu who was in midair. His actions were as smooth as flowing water, as though he had practiced it countless times. Suddenly, the seemingly ordinary gigantic bow lit up with 4 spirit lights. It was a supreme-grade spirit weapon. The bow was like a full moon and the arrows were like shooting stars. Swoosh! 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 The 3 arrows tore through the air and arrived before Feng Haoyu instantly. It was too fast. At the same time, the blood-colored skull in midair collided with the golden palm. The blood-colored skull swallowed the golden palm in a single gulp and paused for a moment. A series of cracks appeared on the skull, bursting forth with endless golden light before exploding. Feng Haoyu dodged the 3 incoming cold lights. However, he was suddenly struck by the aftershocks of the 2 secret skills and his body paused, slowing down by half a step. Poof! Blood flashed and an arrow streaked across Feng Haoyu's face, piercing his head by a hair's breadth. Crack! Crack! Feng Haoyu could not dodge the other 2 arrows completely and struck the spirit wings on his back. A pair of spiritual wings shattered on the spot, and Feng Haoyu's figure fell. Boom! Right then, a loud bang sounded from below. The ground of the metal region seemed to be shaking as though the heavens were collapsing. Under countless gazes, Su Zimo stomped fiercely on the ground and leaped into the air with the burst of his physique. In the blink of an eye, he arrived above Feng Haoyu. That height was a full 100 feet. Even perfected being Jean Dan might not be able to jump that high with the burst of his physique. Rumble. Splash. Immediately after, the cultivators both inside and outside the 5 elements umbrella heard a series of strange sounds. It sounded like rumbling divine thunder or a tsunami. There was even the sound of a ferocious tiger and leopard mixed in, causing one to feel uneasy. However, those sounds came from Su Zimo's body. Feng Haoyu, I'm going to sacrifice you to my saber today. A thick saber that was half the height of a person suddenly appeared in Su Zimo's hands. Spirit energy surged into it and the 5 spirit patterns shone with a blinding blood light. Blood Quencher was born. The gigantic saber was scarlet and vibrated with a buzzing sound, emitting a chilling killing intent that shook one's soul. Die. Channeling his bloodline, Su Zimos. He Haoyu wielded it with both hands and descended from the skies, slashing down on Feng Haoyu's head with an unparalleled aura. Blood Quencher seemed to be able to fuse with Su Zimos' bloodline perfectly as a blood beam appeared on its blade. The void seemed to have been split into 2 by Blood Quencher. Su Zimo had been waiting for this slash for way too long. Su's, Suz's, S's, S, and SSS. This was Su Zimo's charged attack. Even without revealing his demonic cultivation, this was Su Zimo's strongest attack. The perfect fusion of his body, bloodline and spirit energy coupled with the killing power of Blood Quencher was something Su Zimo believed that Feng Haoyu was dead for sure. Raising his head slightly, Feng Haoyu's face turned incomparably pale when he saw that. It was as though he had returned to a few years ago when he suffered a crushing defeat in Array Peak's spirit arena. However, a few years ago, they were from the same sect. A few years later, they were mortal enemies. But this time round, Su Zimo did not hold back. In a flash, Feng Haoyu did not have time to think as he pulled out a blood-colored shield from his storage bag. Instantly, it expanded and blocked above his head. Chapter 332. In the water region, the chaotic battle was already at its final moment and there were less than 10 people left. Apart from Misty Peak's Jiqing Tian who was watching from afar, the remaining 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators were already giving it their all for the final spot. Although Chen Mengqi was not severely injured, she could not treat her wounds in time and blood flowed endlessly. Coupled with the fact that her stamina and spirit energy were depleted, she could no longer hold on. Heis. Chen Mengqi sighed gently. Although she was indignant, her life was more important. She could only crush her escaped jade talisman and leave the 5 elements umbrella helplessly. Returning to the square, Chen Mengqi hurriedly took out a few elixirs from her storage bag and swallowed them. She then sprinkled some blood-staunching elixir and bandaged her wounds simply. Throughout the entire process, Chen Mengqi pursed her lips in silence. She was indignant. She was so close to leaving her name on the spirit ranking. She was so close to obtaining the qualifications to enter the ancient battlefield. Although she was only cultivating for a year inside, she could unlock at least 1 or 2 more spirit meridians and reach 6 Meridian Foundation establishment. I'll definitely be able to leave my name on the spirit ranking when I take part in the next sect competition 10 years later. With that thought in mind, Chen Mengqi was about to return to the crowd when she caught sight of Feng Haoyu who was lying not far away, dead and covered in blood. Chen Mengqi's pupils constricted instinctively. Feng Haoyu was a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator and had cultivated the 3 great secret skills of Misty Peak. He was almost guaranteed to obtain a spot on the spirit ranking. Who could have killed him? Chen Mengqi was alarmed. Could it be? Instinctively, Chen Mengqi raised her head and shuddered. Her mouth opened gradually with a look of disbelief in her eyes. She caught sight of a familiar figure in the metal region. He actually crossed 2 large regions and passed through 2 Tier 4 killing arrays. Could he truly be the one who killed Feng Haoyu? Immediately after, Chen Mengqi heard someone say, "Fellow Taoists, please leave. I, Misty Peak, have taken up the spot for this region." He said it casually as though he was chatting. However, none of the dozens of 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators present dared to refute him. After a while, one of them shook his head and sighed. He clasped his fists at that person and crushed the escaped jade without saying a word. Following his departure, the remaining cultivators in the metal region, despite their reluctance, also began to leave one after another. Now that 2-5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators were in such a state, none of the cultivators inside dared to linger. Seeing this scene, Chen Mengqi's eyes gradually dimmed. Back then. Perhaps the person standing beside him today would be me, right? Chen Mengqi's heart suddenly surged with an indescribable bitterness. Names had already appeared one after another on the spirit ranking. Su Zimo, Ji Qingtian, Little Fatty, Shi Jian, Jun Hao, Si Yutang, Xian Yi and Lu Hui looked relieved, unable to conceal the joy in their eyes. Although Misty Peak had suffered heavy losses 3 years ago, they had still managed to steal the limelight in the Intersect tournament. Notwithstanding the fact that they occupied 3 spots on the spirit ranking, even the weapon ranking that they did not have a name on previously was the number 1 spot. Of course, for Xian Yi and Lu Hui, the most important thing was that Su Zimo was still alive. Furthermore, Su Zimo had killed the traitor Feng Haoyu in front of everyone. It could be considered as revenge for the cultivators who died in Dongling Valley. However, for some reason, both of them felt an inexplicable sense of frustration and unease. Before long, the final 10 people participating in the spirit ranking competition appeared. The end of the spirit ranking competition meant that the Intersect tournament was about to come to an end as well. The Emperor stood up. The rankings of the 4 rankings are out. Among them, if someone occupies 2 spots, he can make the decision to bring the other person along. Little Fatty whispered, "Bro, I think he's talking about you." Su Zimo nodded. He occupied 2 spots on the weapon and spirit ranking. Apart from using one for himself, he could give the other to others. He had long made his choice for that spot. When she heard that, Chen Mengqi's heart skipped a beat and she looked at Su Zimo instinctively with a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Perfected Lord Mingzhe declared, "The Intersect tournament is over. The cultivators of the 4 rankings will follow me to the palace later to choose their rewards. After that, everyone will head back to rest and wait for the ancient battlefield to open." Hold on. Right then, a bone-chilling voice sounded with a hint of killing intent. Everyone looked over and saw the Blood Crow King walking towards the spectator area slowly. He exuded a terrifying aura and his gaze landed on Su Zimo as he said coldly, "I'm taking this person away." "No." Xian Yi slapped the table and stood up, rejecting flatly. The Blood Crow King narrowed his gaze and reached out with his withered palm, grabbing towards Xian Yi through the void. In the void, an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation burst forth. A withered, blood-colored claw appeared. It was incomparably sharp and had a torrential demonic chi as it grabbed towards Xian Yi viciously. At the spectator area, the hearts of many perfected Jin Dan beings skipped a beat. That power was way too strong and had completely surpassed the scope of spirit energy. That was a true dermic art. This cultivator with the Dao title of Blood Cliff was a nascent soul fiend demon. At that thought, everyone was even more shocked. It was one thing for a fiend demon to appear in the capital, but to think that he would dare to make a move in front of the emperor, what sort of backing did he have for that? Xian Yi's face was pale. Against the other party's might, he was almost helpless. Furthermore, the Blood Crow King's claw directly sealed off all his escape routes. Clang! 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 Xian Yi grit his teeth and forced himself to attack against the might of a nascent soul fiend demon. He withdrew 6 flying swords from his storage bag and guided them with his fingertips, creating a hexagonal sword formation swiftly. Hexagonal sword formation. Although Xian Yi did not cultivate a Jin Dan phenomenon, he could fight against some ordinary Jin Dan phenomenons with the hexagonal sword formation. Go! Xian Yi pointed forward. Endless sword chi burst forth from the hexagonal sword formation and collided fiercely against the blood-colored claw in midair. Chapter 333. Ji Feng was the name of the Emperor of Great Zhou. It had been many years since anyone dared to call him by his name, let alone in front of everyone. Perfected Lord Ming-zhe strode forward and hollered with a cold expression, "Blood Crow King, this is the capital of Great Zhou. You're not allowed to act brazenly here." Even though he said that, Perfected Lord Ming-zhe did not make a move. He knew the background of the Blood Crow King clearly. Since the Emperor of Great Zhou did not speak, he did not dare to act rashly for fear of bringing an unstoppable disaster to the Great Zhou dynasty. "I'll repeat myself. I'm going to take Su Zimo away today." Surveying his surroundings, the Blood Crow King's cold gaze landed on the Emperor of Great Zhou's face as he said slowly, "Anyone who dares to stop me will be an enemy of Blood Crow Palace." Piak. The Emperor of Great Zhou's palm slammed down heavily and the table beside him cracked. The Emperor of Great Zhou stood up slowly with a sharp killing intent in his eyes. Just as he was about to speak, an old voice sounded in his mind. "Ji Fang, don't bother about this matter." When he heard that voice, the Emperor of Great Zhou's heart skipped a beat. If it was anyone else, the Emperor of Great Zhou would have hesitated. However, the person who spoke was the patriarch of the Ji family, the founder of the Great Zhou dynasty and an old monster who had lived for close to 10,000 years. It was also because of his existence that the Great Zhou dynasty was able to stand tall for 10,000 years and rule over the world. The words of the patriarch of the Ji family were like an imperial edict that could not be questioned. Under countless gazes, the Emperor of Great Zhou sat down slowly after rising. His aura vanished without a trace and his expression was terrible. "Father?" Ji Yaoshue seemed to have realized something and called out softly. The Emperor of Great Zhou closed his eyes and shook his head slightly, indicating that he was helpless. Instantly, Ji Yaoshue's face turned incomparably pale. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and was secretly shocked as well. If the Emperor of Great Zhou did not appear under such circumstances, there was no way Xian Yi and Lu Hui could stop the Blood Crow King. In other words, he would definitely be taken away by the Blood Crow King today. It was obvious what the outcome would be. Su Zimo suddenly realized that although the person who had chased after him was in a sorry state under the pressure of the divine dragon, this person was much more terrifying than he had imagined. At the very least, even the Great Zhou dynasty had to avoid him. Hee hee. The Blood Crow King chuckled and nodded. "That's right. That's right." When Demoness Ji saw that the situation was amiss, she hurriedly sent a voice transmission and urged, "Auntie Gu, hurry and think of something. The moment Su Zimo is captured, he'll definitely die. What can I do?" Gu Shi shook her head and said, "I've already said that the outcome of the 5 Elements umbrella is not important. This Su Zimo has offended the Blood Crow Palace and deserves this tribulation. But we can't just watch as he's taken away. Auntie Gu, you should do something." Demoness Ji frowned slightly. "It's useless." Gu Shi said indifferently, "Even if I can save him this time, he will still die when he returns from the primordial battlefield. Furthermore, Misty Peak will also suffer a great calamity and may very well be destroyed. Go and inform that senior." The moment Demoness Ji spoke, she was interrupted by Gu Shi. "He's from Shura sect and Shura sect cultivates the Heartless Tao. Do you think that he'll make a move?" Demoness Ji's tone was resolute. "Auntie Gu, we'll talk about the future later. However, you must save Su Zimo this time round." Gu Shi did not comment and merely sighed gently. The Blood Crow King arrived not far away from Su Zimo and smiled coldly, revealing his white teeth as he said coldly, "Su Zimo, accept your fate." Boom! The Blood Crow King reached out and arrived before Su Zimo instantly, as though he had transcended the endless void. Xian Yi, Lu Hui, and the others could not save him in time. Furthermore, even if the two of them attacked, they would not be able to shake the Blood Crow King's strength. Bang! Right then, a slender hand appeared in front of Su Zimo. Although it looked delicate, it blocked the Blood Crow King's palm with ease. The The Blood Crow King's expression changed as he squinted his eyes and met a pair of bewitching eyes that were like spring water rippling with ripples. Instantly, the Blood Crow King was lost and had a lost expression. In the eyes of others, there was nothing wrong with Gu Shi's eyes as she looked at the Blood Crow King calmly. However, in the eyes of the Blood Crow King, Gu Shi's eyes seemed to be emitting two sinister glows that produced a mysterious power that could control his mind and bewitch everything. All of a sudden, a sanguine glint flashed through the depths of the Blood Crow King's eyes as another power was produced in his body that was extremely evil and strong. The Blood Crow King jolted awake and felt a faint stinging pain in his eyes. "How dare you stand in the way of Blood Crow Palace?" The Blood Crow King regulated his breathing for a moment but did not dare to look at Gu Shi again as he asked sternly. Gu Shi replied indifferently, "Go back. I'll protect this person." "Can you protect him?" "At the very least, you won't be able to take him away today." The Blood Crow King's face was livid as he pondered on the spot for a long time before nodding slowly. Good, good, good. A year later, when Master comes out of seclusion, I'll see who can protect him." The Blood Crow King soared into the air and transformed into a pitch-black crow. Blinking his scarlet eyes, he sped away and disappeared into the distant horizons before long. Everyone from Misty Peak heaved a sigh of relief. In the exchange earlier on, they truly thought that Su Zimo was going to be taken away by the Blood Crow King. Su Zimo turned around and came before Gu Shi. Bowing deeply, he said in a deep voice, "Thank you for saving me, Senior." Yes, Gu Shi nodded and did not say anything else. When this scene landed in the eyes of the crowd, it gave them a different feeling. Most of the sects had the intention of watching a good show when Su Zimo was taken away by the Blood Crow King. Those like True Fire's sect were even gloating. Furthermore, everyone could tell that even the Emperor was unwilling to provoke Blood Crow Palace and chose to remain silent. To think that Gu Shi's intervention would save Su Zimo. Could Sky Treasure Auction House be stronger than the entire Great Zhou dynasty and dare to challenge Blood Crow Palace? Everyone could vaguely sense that Gu Shi was not as simple as she seemed on the surface and was merely the chief steward of Sky Treasure Auction House. Perfected Lord Mingzhe coughed gently and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, please be quiet. Cultivators of the 4 ranking lists, follow me into the palace to choose your rewards." Su Zimo first sent Xian Yi, Lu Hui, and a few other Misty Peak cultivators to Mo's spirit weapon workshop before following Perfected Lord Mingzhe into the palace. Nian Qi was at a critical juncture of his breakthrough for the past 2 days and had come to watch the sect competition. Su Zimo arranged for Night Spirit to guard the weapon workshop so it was rather safe. This time round, Su Zimo had left his name on the weapon and spirit ranking and could choose any spirit weapon or secret art he wanted. Su Zimo was not interested in choosing spirit weapons. There was no way the Great Zhou dynasty would give out perfect and connate spirit weapons as rewards, and Su Zimo was not interested in spirit weapons of other grades. However, the Great Zhou dynasty had been established for close to 10,000 years and there were bound to be many secret art manuals in the palace. Su Zimo truly wanted to take a look, he might be able to find some lost secret skills. Chapter 334. Su Zimo walked around the spirit weapon chamber in the palace and did not find anything. He casually took a superior grade spirit weapon and left. Not far from the spirit weapon chamber was the secret manual chamber. Everyone else on the spirit ranking had entered long ago and Su Zimo had entered as well. There were 3 levels to the secret manual chamber. Su Zimo and the others could only choose a spirit art secret manual on the first level and make a copy of it to bring out. There were rows of bookshelves in the secret manual chamber in an orderly manner with layers of bamboo slips and paper scrolls. There were many types. Nefarious Hand. This was a secret skill. According to the bamboo slips, this skill could take on spirit weapons head-on and even snatch them away. 8 Gale Transformations. This was a movement secret manual. After cultivating it, one's footsteps would be abnormally agile and their movements would be erratic. There were 8 basic transformations and as many as 64 transformations could be derived. It was extremely powerful. Su Zimo walked along the bookshelves and browsed through them. The many spirit arts secret manuals broadened his horizons. Some of them were so strange that Su Zimo had never heard of them before and was filled with novelty. However, there was no spirit art that moved Su Zimo the entire time. Suddenly, Su Zimo's gaze froze. Khanate spirit weapon forging technique. Su Zimo frowned slightly and picked up a dried beast skin. The disheveled old man from Misty Peak had once told him that the limit of a weapon refinement master was to refine perfect spirit weapons with 5 spirit patterns. However, Khanate spirit weapons had a 6th spirit pattern known as the Khanate pattern. That Khanate pattern was born from the spirit chi of heaven and earth and could not be refined by humans. As Su Zimo's understanding of weapon refinement deepened, he was certain that the disheveled old man's words were not wrong. The appearance of Blood Quencher proved that point even more. Even the condensation of the 5th spirit pattern had to be done at the right time, place and people. The weapon refinement master's mentality, state and the uncontrollable and ethereal fortune, let alone the 6th spirit pattern. As the number 1 weapon refinement master of the Great Zhou dynasty, Su Zimo was extremely disdainful towards this so-called Khanate spirit weapon forging technique given his standards in weapon refinement. He merely thought that it was the work of an arrogant and ignorant weapon refinement master. Su Zimo was about to put the beast skin scroll back when his heart skipped a beat and he took a look at the contents. A moment later, Su Zimo's eyes flickered in thought. "Bro, have you chosen?" Right at this moment, the little fatty's voice rang out as he ran over excitedly with an excited expression on his face. Su Zimo turned around. Little Fatty waved the bamboo scroll in his hands and whispered, "I found a secret skill that's especially suitable for me, heh." Su Zimo smiled and turned back to look at the beast skin scroll in his hands. A look of determination flashed through his eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Let's go. I've chosen too." At the entrance, Su Zimo and Little Fatty handed the bamboo scroll and beast skin scroll to an old man. The old man took over the bamboo slips and beast skin scroll and glanced at them. Suddenly, he frowned and raised his head to look at Su Zimo with a strange expression. He reminded him kindly, "Lad, this smithing art is the nonsense of a madman. Even he can't do it. Are you sure you want to copy this book?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. The old man smiled and stopped persuading him. He made 2 copies and handed them to Su Zimo and Little Fatty. The moment they left the secret manual chamber, Little Fatty asked curiously, "Bro, what secret skill did you choose?" "Why did the old man say that?" Khanate spirit weapon forging technique, Su Zimo did not hide it. "Ah." Little Fatty was dumbfounded. Although he was not a weapon refinement master, he knew some common knowledge of the cultivation world such as how Khanate spirit weapons were born from heaven and earth spirit chi. "Khanate spirit weapons can be refined?" Little Fatty stuttered. Su Zimo shook his head. "It's hard to say. The beast skin scroll only mentioned a possibility. I've never tried it before so I'm not sure either." In actuality, the so-called innate spirit tool smithing art was more like a restoration art than a smithing art. There was a method mentioned in the scroll. Firstly, there had to be a damaged Khanate spirit weapon. The so-called damage did not refer to the spirit weapon being damaged. Instead, it referred to the situation where the 6th Khanate spirit pattern was broken. Su Zimo happened to have a damaged Khanate spirit weapon in his storage bag, the mystic gold silk armor. Secondly, he had to find a Khanate spirit fire. A Khanate spirit fire was much more terrifying than a level 3 spirit fire. It had a higher temperature and was sentient. Usually, it hid deep underground and was rarely seen. Even a damaged Khanate spirit weapon would not have any impurities. In other words, one could completely skip the first 4 steps of weapon refinement by using a Khanate spirit fire to forge a Khanate spirit weapon. Spirit gathering would begin after the weapon was burned red. Because the temperature of the Khanate spirit fire was too high, the weapon tripod would not be able to withstand it. Therefore, spirit gathering could only be done without the protection of the weapon tripod. After condensing 5 spirit patterns in a row, there was a possibility of repairing the 6th Khanate spirit pattern using the sentience of the Khanate spirit fire. It sounded simple, but as long as one thought about it carefully, one would know that it was a complete fantasy. Prior to this, there was not a single weapon refinement master in Tianhuang mainland who could guarantee a 100% success rate of condensing 4 spirit patterns, let alone 5 or 6 spirit patterns. Furthermore, there was no protection of the weapon tripod throughout the entire process. As long as there was a single mistake, the weapon refinement master could die on the spot. Which weapon refinement master would risk his life for the sake of a damaged Khanate spirit weapon with a success rate of less than 1 in 10,000? But now, the most dangerous and difficult part of the entire process had become much simpler for Su Zimo. If there was a single person in Tianhuang mainland who could repair a Khanate spirit weapon, it would be Su Zimo. Of course, this forging technique was merely a possibility. After all, this person had not tried it before and no one knew if he could succeed in the end. Su Zimo did not insist and merely memorized the forging technique in his heart for the time being, waiting for an opportunity. Su Zimo replied indifferently, I already have someone in mind. Ah. Shen Mengqi's eyes dimmed and she looked disappointed. Forcing a smile, she asked, may I know who it is? My spirit beast. Su Zimo did not hide it either. He was prepared to bring along Night Spirit for that spot to begin with. The reason why he did not choose to bring along Nian Qi was because if he had to choose between Nian Qi and Night Spirit, he would definitely choose Night Spirit. Although Nian Qi had followed Su Zimo for 3 years, in comparison, Su Zimo had deeper feelings for Night Spirit even though Night Spirit was only a spirit beast. Furthermore, Nian Qi's current cultivation realm was not high and was only at late-stage foundation establishment. It might not be a good thing for him to enter the ancient battlefield. When she heard that, Shen Mengqi was agitated and said angrily, Su Zimo, even if you don't want to give it to me, you don't have to insult me like that. Did I insult you? Su Zimo did not understand why Shen Mengqi was so agitated all of a sudden. Shen Mengqi questioned, you'd rather give that spot to a spirit beast than me. Isn't that an insult to me? Fu. Su Zimo shook his head and sneered, Night Spirit saved my life before. Why can't I give it to it? Why should I give it to you? Shen Mengqi opened her mouth, as though she wanted to say something. However, after a moment, she did not say anything and merely stood on the spot in a daze with a pale face. Su Zimo had already left in a huff. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.